I'd like to convene the Reading Select Board. Today is November 9th. It is 7:30 p.m. Tonight's meeting of the Select Board is being recorded on RCTV Live. You can watch on Comcast Channel 22 or Verizon Channel 23. And the videographer for tonight's meeting is Rob. Check rctv.org for more information and for replay times. Tonight's meeting, we will start off with liaison reports and town manager. We will open the floor to public comment. We then have some consent agenda items. One of the items will be to approve some VASC volunteers to boards and committees, and we will take the ZBA candidates out of order and do them first, and then resume the rest of the consent agenda and the rest of the volunteers. Then we will discuss and vote on a mediation process with Mr. Tuval related to his open meeting law complaints and discussion on potential responses. Then at 8:10, we will discuss and vote to execute a purchase and sale agreement for a portion of land attached to Meadowbrook related to July 6th notice of intent to sell. Is that going to be a discussion and a vote, or just a discussion?
Just a discussion.
Okay, it'll be just a discussion tonight. At 8:20, we will discuss and vote to approve the EV charging station license with RMLD. At 8:30, we will have a discussion presentation from the RMLD commissioners related to, and probably the general manager and potentially other staff, related to rates, what RMLD is planning to address their climate law obligations, and then a further discussion of electrification and economic development planning between Reading and RMLD. At 9:30, we will have someone from the Climate Advisory Committee, Chair David Zeke, talk to us about what is a sustainability director and how might that be important to Reading's future. After that, we'll discuss future addendas and approve 2 sets of meeting minutes. Okay, so with that, I would like to make a motion to take the VASC ZBA appointees out of order and do that first.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Ann?
Yes, I think can we just raise our hands since
We
we're
could.
all
All
actually here?
those in favor of taking them out of order, raise your hand. 5-0. Very good.
All right. Move to make the following appointments. Cy Cowett to finish out a full membership on the ZBA with a term ending June 30th, 2022. Ryan Bork to a full membership on the ZBA with a term ending June 30, 2024. Patrick Houghton to an associate membership on the ZBA with a term ending June 30, 2022. And Andrew Grassberger to an associate membership on the ZBA with a term ending June 30, 2022.
Second.
Oh, second, sorry. Okay, I'm impressed that you have that many candidates, and thank you to everybody who stepped up. Board members, do you have any discussion? The resumes were in the packet, or Val, did you want to have any comments?
The goal was to fill the committee. We had really good candidates.
Yep.
We had 2 volunteers, both Cyan and Bob Redfern, who are experienced members of the board, volunteered to come back and help train these new folks. And what Carlo and I recommend is that we had so many good candidates, let's put as many of them on as we can and ask Cy to stay on for 1 year, which is what his goal was, to help train them and to get things moving. So that was our recommendation.
Very good. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do we have a motion that for all of those individuals and terms, associate versus full? Are you ready to go with that? Okay, any other discussion? None appearing. Okay, may I have a motion?
Sorry, that was the motion.
Oh, that was the motion.
And a
Okay,
second.
so we're just
And we
voting
can
then?
vote, yeah.
Okay, everyone in favor of these wonderful volunteers, thank you very much. Please raise your hand. 5-0. Congratulations, thank you very much. Good
Thanks,
job.
Cy. Thank you very much.
Off to your meeting. Thank you.
Chop chop. Laura's right out there. Laura, thank you very much for being willing to swear them in immediately so they can get right to work. Not that we're slave drivers or anything, but. Okay,
Awesome.
that's wonderful. Okay, Really appreciate, Bob, really appreciate you and Laura coordinating to make that happen. There was a particular resident, I understand, that had pressing needs for the ZBA to be able to function tonight, and so it's wonderful when we can do things like that. Okay, next, select board liaison reports. Would anybody like to go first? Chris?
Thanks, Karen. The park meeting after the subsequent meeting where, we were gonna have the discussion on, the date for all the resident participation, et cetera, that's getting bumped out now with no future dates set. And then, we're gonna be voting tomorrow night to extend the, select board thing beyond December 31st. So that's on the agenda for tomorrow. And then the full board will have something prepared for all the residents at a future meeting we'll come up with. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that.
So do we need to then vote to extend the life of the park? So we'll have to have that on one of our future agendas? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there kind of a timeline that's expected?
No, it's gonna get discussed tomorrow night. So with the Thanksgiving and the holidays, it's kind of trying to finagle something in there, but.
Is it a short extension or is it a long?
Oh, no, I believe that we were gonna be all done by the end of this year, and it's more of like, if I had to guess, maybe another meeting or two kind of scenario. I don't think it's like June, I'm gonna be telling you the same thing, so, no, nothing like that, so.
Okay, so we'd have something in the.
Oh, yeah, there's, the bulk of the work that everyone submitted is getting presented tomorrow night during the meeting, but then we're gonna finalize things before it comes before, giving you guys an update as well as having the public and whatnot, so.
Just one more question. Do you think that the results of your next meeting, there'll be something of an update to share with the board in terms of kind of here's where we are, here's where we're.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I generally know where things are going, but I don't want to get, put the cart before the horse kind of scenario. I believe there's a general consensus of kind of the way things are going. So it's moving in that direction. I don't think we're all on different stratospheres and that kind of thing.
Could I, just maybe turning it the other way, could we ask that the committee shares with us at the end of the meeting, kind of an update?
Oh, yeah.
What's going
Yep.
on in timing?
Yeah,
I think that'd be helpful.
I'll mention it to Bernie and Liz. So.
Thanks. Because one of the things that we wanted to do, the reason we had December is we wanted time to be of the essence.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yep.
Just want to make sure we're still on that track.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, I don't plan on it being anything too outrageous. So I know we started a week or two late. Not that it matters. We had a good time frame set up, but some of the meetings have gone 4 or 5 hours, if you can believe it. Just it is what it is. So lots of opinions, but we'll get there.
So where's the parking garage going?
It's not going anywhere. If we'll leave it at that.
Your driveway, Kyle.
It's gonna be a small garage.
It's a little carport.
Yeah.
So that's what I got for Park. Obviously for FinCom, the bulk of everything they did for the last month or so was just approving all the things for the warrants and whatnot. So it was good that they got to square that all away for town meeting and participate in that. I didn't realize how involved, obviously FinCom and the money and all that, but being new, I didn't realize how much of a significant role they played in all of town government for the most part. So. And then the last thing is I was able to attend the HRAC event that was put on by Cheryl Lestrade over last week, and I got to meet a lot of people that you would never normally meet in a normal scenario from different boards and committees, so I just want to thank her for putting that together, because otherwise I wouldn't have met a couple new people, so pretty good with that. And that's all I got.
Very good. Next. Mark.
Thanks, Karen. So a couple things. The training for dementia-friendly Reading, I'm wondering if either November 30th or December 6th at 6 p.m. would work for a 1-hour virtual training. Or a third option, which is December 6th at 7 p.m. make sure that that doesn't conflict with our
Yeah,
meeting.
okay, thank you.
I didn't think it did, but suddenly I think I better check that to make sure.
I think we also are going to want to make sure that we stay a little bit flexible with off evenings in December, just because of scheduling town manager finalists to come before the board. We'll want to make sure that we have some flexibility to do that.
That quick?
I'd say by mid-December. That's, yeah, and I certainly I can give a little bit of an update on the timeline.
So
But
let's,
I'd say for now, I don't have anything on the 30th.
the 30th or 6th work for folks, is their preference? And on the 6th at 7 PM, there actually is a CPD workshop, so maybe we should do 6 on the
Yeah, so
6th if we're gonna
CPD
do that
workshop
as
is
an
probably
option.
something.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm good for the 30th. I don't know what everyone else is.
Yeah. I'm good for the
It
30th.
has to be all of us at once kind of
I'm
thing?
actually traveling that night. What were we gonna do that night? Dementia-friendly training?
Yeah.
I mean, I could try to catch, oh, they're only gonna do it once. Is it gonna be recorded?
I can certainly ask.
Okay, I'm traveling that
Yeah.
night, otherwise, I'm happy to watch a recorded version if they can do that. Thank you.
And does that work for you, 30th?
Right now, it looks okay.
Carla?
Yep.
Okay. So let me just confirm that with Megan Putney, and I'll get back to confirm. It's at 6, great.
Make sure we post as well.
Yes, thank you.
It's not a meeting.
Yep, absolutely, we'll post. Some recalc updates that relate to Council on Aging. So the council recommended longtime member John Parsons to be their representative on recalc. On the rec side, they have recommended Mike Coltman to be the representative to recalc. So those pieces are moving. In terms of the community representatives, I think we posted on the 28th, is that right, Caitlin? Did we post on the 28th of October?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's about the right date. And so conceivably, we could have a vast meeting as early as next week if we have enough candidates. Current status is we have two applications that are in. We have 4 openings, so the word to the community is, folks, please, we would love to have the opportunity for you to participate in thinking about the needs for the 60-plus community now and going forward, and the best way to address these needs. There's some really interesting stuff going on in North Reading already, and there's a select board member that Kevin Bowmiller got me in touch with. They're doing a lot of things. There's a lot happening in this area, and really want to get as much community input into this process as possible. So please, if you're interested, you can go to the town website, you can fill out a volunteer form, or you can come into town hall, fill out the volunteer form, and I think as soon as we have enough candidates, it'd be great to get a vast meeting together. So let's see how quickly that can go. Last item, Cato, the Coalition of Us, held a tour on Sunday for local officials to share and discuss the history of enslaved people in Reading. Karen and I attended, along with the new superintendent, a number of school principals, school leaders, Sean Brandt, Sarah McLaughlin from school committee. It was really interesting to learn the history of enslaved people, including the grave sites of some community leaders who had been enslaved in the 1700s. There are some actually buried in the cemetery. A lot of research was done by Kara Gleason, a former Reading history teacher, and by Megan Howie, a current teacher in the Reading school system. And it was a good event. And that's it.
Very good. It was, I think they recorded the event too. I don't know what their plans are, but I thought it was a worthwhile.
Yeah, it was great.
Very
Actually,
worthwhile,
Senator
very
Lewis
well
was there
done.
too.
Yes,
It was good, and
weather
yeah,
was perfect.
couldn't have been better.
Okay, Carla or Ann?
Let's see, so with respect to the ad hoc town manager screening committee, and please feel free to fill in any gaps. But we should be having our first meeting on Wednesday, the 17th at 5 PM. It still has to be posted, but that is the plan for an organizational meeting, then to go into executive session. And I believe the Bernie's plan is to review resumes. The deadline is actually tomorrow for candidates to apply. And then the following week, the screening committee is holding sometime at the beginning of the week for possible interviews for the screening committee for the semifinalists, that then the screening committee would review to bring forward some finalists for the board to consider.
Very good.
Do you know how many applicants we have?
So I left Bernie a message today hoping to get a specific number for you, so I'm not sure what the current tally is.
He mentioned one candidate was no longer available because after the election, she was happy with how the town council wound up and chose to stay put. So he said, unfortunately, that would have been a good one, but he's very optimistic that there's still
Said there are-
excellent candidates.
Please tell you there are other good folks in the mix.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Are those new glasses? I love them.
They are new glasses,
I
yes. Our last meeting, my glasses were broken and I was like, that's why I kept putting them on and off, but yes, I do have new glasses. Thanks for noticing, Karen. Just to piggyback on Chris's update from FinCom, I understand that they have set forth the structure for the subcommittee that would look at how the town would spend its ARPA funding. So on a future agenda, we should think about a future agenda to appoint two members of the board to that subcommittee.
So I actually attended a conference today, or attended on the phone, a conference about how different communities around the country are looking at ARPA and deciding what to do. And I should get the slides in a couple of days, but I think it'd be really interesting to take a look at that before we kind of decide how we want things to be structured. There were some really interesting things, including gathering community input to decide how much gets spent on kind of core priorities versus setting aside funds for some kind of special activities. There were discussions of having a smaller amount of funds available and having different groups in town that might have interest to present on what their interests are and to see if that might be a good use for a certain amount of those funds. It was very interesting. There were some folks doing it. I also talked to Senator Lewis about it on Saturday to see if there's something happening in the state in terms of a general structure for doing it. And the answer is no, there's not a general structure for doing it. People kind of figure it out on their own at this point.
So maybe that can all be discussed at a future agenda item.
I think so. It is evolving a little bit. I'll finish up with a FinCom update. I've been attending all the meetings, and the last meeting was a good amount of time talking about this committee. And so it's fair enough to have the rest of the select board weigh in, but it was spanning select board and school committee and FinCom, sort of organized and directed through FinCom, but also including town manager, I believe the town accountant and the superintendent and the CFO from the school side, the finance director. So there was talk about also one of the first things that this committee might do is, like our ad hoc town manager screening committee, set a charge. How broad do you want the planning to be in terms of, at the moment, there were discussions about not only ARPA, but also looking at if FinCom determines these are excess free cash funds that we don't need to retain under our policy, so should those be looked at as well? We also had an update, you all received an email from the Senate that they are moving forward with their plans to distribute more ARPA funds. So things are evolving, and we could talk about, what that charge should be and the structure, and that's great to get input from the community as well, I think. So Carlo?
Thanks. I just have a quick question for Mark. Who gave the presentation? Just curious.
It's a private company called Civic Plus, I think was the name of it.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure how I got solicited. I think it came into the select board
Yes, it does.
email address.
Okay.
And I just kind of pinged on it and listened to it for an hour. But because I registered, I'll get the slides, I'll share the slides.
Oh, good.
Thank you, that'd be wonderful.
Right, so other than VASC, that was very productive from Mark and myself. CPDC, Woburn Street was delayed, maybe to the next meeting. There was no reason given. A lot of back and forth, a lot of community input on the Chute Street, last corner Green Tomato Building. New design came, well, I shouldn't say new design. A lot of updates to the building were presented, more retail square footage, a few less apartments, and just some design changes, and there was a lot of back and forth between the board, residents. Obviously, this project is a high-profile project and will go on for quite some time, but it seems like they're moving forward. It seems like something's gonna go there. We don't know, we're not privy to what the leases situation is that came up again for some of the tenants, but all in all, there was some mixed comments on the look of the building from the CPDC, the size and the impact and the noise. They covered a lot of bases that night. A lot of back and forth, a lot of residents attended that either own property nearby or live nearby, and some of the tenants over there. And Recreation Committee didn't meet. I was unfortunate they couldn't attend the Board of Health. That was, I think, about a week ago, and that's it.
Okay, cool. Okay, we talked about FinCom, we talked about the coalition of us, Cato. I also attended the A-Track event, but after Chris had left for the evening, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank Bob, town manager, for being willing to sponsor this first ever event for our board and committee members to meet personally, and it was held at Biltmore, Maine, so it was supporting a local business, and it wasn't like an uncomfortable situation. Enough people came. I thought that you could see people, met people volunteers that I hadn't met before, and I didn't feel like it was dangerous. And so it was very good, and the A-Track volunteers were wonderful to put that together, and hopefully we can do that again in the future. So thank you, Bob. One great piece of news, I've had a couple of conversations with the legislators, and Brad Jones initially brought up to me that he wanted Reading to know that he and Rich have both put $150,000 into the budget potentially to help us with this Meadowbrook property acquisition and or development. And Senator Lewis confirmed that. I made him aware of it, and the timeline that he presented on Saturday was that they could make a decision by the end of November, and we could potentially have funds to work with by January, if fingers are crossed. So I really appreciate our legislators for doing that for us. That would go a long way to, helping us make that project a wonderful addition.
So that's in the ARPA bill that the House did, and then, okay.
Perhaps, you might know better than me that part.
Sounds like it's probably in the bill that the House passed about distribution of
Yes, I think
ARPA
so.
funds. And then the
Okay.
Senate was taking it up today, so I don't know what they ended up doing, but did Senator Lewis say that that he's offered an amendment for the inclusion of that money?
We didn't get into those
Sure,
terms.
okay.
So my question was, when one legislator tells me this, should I let your office know, or do you already know? So I was trying to feel that out, but he was like,
They're all over it in one
yes,
way or
well,
another.
I felt
Okay.
very comfortable, and he was very supportive and asked if that was enough.
Yep.
And I said, well, yeah, for now, we'll be back. But you may
Okay.
be right, I'm not sure what bill it
Okay.
was wrapped up in. Thank you.
Okay.
And one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have a wonderful, our veterans agent, Kevin Miller, to thank, I hope I got the title right, for organizing another Veterans Day celebration for this Thursday. All of the details for that item are on the website, and it looks like the weather's gonna be pretty good, so. Yes.
Oh, you gotta remember.
11, good. So I hope everyone has an opportunity to attend.
The donuts starting at 10.
Oh, okay, thank you, I'm gonna write that down, thank you. Yeah, and yes, the Community Paradigm folks are moving right along, right with the original schedule, so knock on wood, that's going forward, and we'll have good news to share soon. Okay, that is up, okay, that is it. So, Bob, did you want to provide us with a report in addition to what you submitted in the packet?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And my understanding of the House and the Senate process is they sort of commingled surplus funds that existed in the budget already from last year
Okay.
and ARPA. So how they're going to divide that wasn't clear, but it was a good problem for them to have, certainly. A couple things. I mentioned last summer, and I'll follow up now, we received a cyber awareness training program grant from the state. and it's still in progress, but I just got a report card, the results are good. We are scoring 20% above the state averages for all cities and towns in terms of both participation and our results of the test, our awareness. So that's terrific. The whole organization, including the school department, is participating. And that's becoming, unfortunately, an increasingly important area is cybersecurity. Secondly, thanks to Harrow's and the Human Elder Services, and I'm going to share a screen as if we're at town meeting. Let's see. So today there was a chicken pie drive-by, and we gave away over 250 bags. And you can see, there it is at the Pleasant Street Center. So I just, again, want to thank Harrow's especially and the Human Elder Services staff.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I put it on my calendar and I missed it.
Yeah.
You did.
For the board, I had a discussion with the chief and a few others today. They have been noticing, and certainly town meeting, brought some facts to the table last night of increased parking, especially overnight in the downtown area. We have a couple solutions for that. We've been waiting for Wakefield to approve the animal control agreement, which they did this Monday. Your board has seen it before. And the reason that's important is we have budgeted a shared animal control / parking enforcement officer. Now we know we can just use the funds for parking enforcement. So we're going to post that part-time job tomorrow or soon. But I want to ask the board specifically what your thoughts are on selling depot and compost stickers. The police department believes it's important, even though the train station's not full, to start selling the depot stickers. And if by your next meeting you have any thoughts to the contrary, if you could please let us know. That's going to help them greatly with enforcement. They have not been enforcing generally in the downtown area because no stickers were sold for the area. So again, if the board has any thoughts, certainly free to send me an email along the way. Last winter, and maybe it was for 2 or 3 winters, they were very lenient on overnight parking except for snowstorms in the winter. There used to be a ban for the whole winter. We may have to go back to that ban because of the number of cars parked overnight in the downtown area. So again, we'll have a better idea, once some enforcement is, again, able to happen. And for folks to know, everything's now available online. You can get your depot or compost stickers online without leaving your house. I want to share a special thanks to moderator Alan Folds and a lot of town staff, and you know who you are. The handful of remote town meetings we've had have been significantly more work for Alan and the staff. And to the extent that people participating remotely didn't have a perfect experience, it was far better than it might have been if not for the hard work, especially of Alan and some of our technology staff and Jane Wellman. So I just wanted to thank them. And lastly, we have a new health director starting next Monday. Stay tuned for further details. That's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, that's really great news, Bob. Thanks for sharing.
Wonderful.
Quick question, Bob, on the parking stickers, they would be expiring 12/31/22?
That's right, Mark. They'd sell them, perhaps sooner, but they'd be effective January 1st. And they're last year's stickers because they already bought them, so they'll understand, or they may cross out the year, but they'll understand that it's for the next calendar year.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to public comment, and we're running behind already. That's why I was thinking about putting liaison reports at the end of the night. Because we have such great news to communicate. Okay, so we have Mr. Bill Brown.
Just want to remind everybody, there's a Veterans Day ceremony tomorrow at 8 o'clock at the high school.
8 o'clock at the high
I
school?
guess I'm going to be the guest speaker,
Oh, okay,
and I'll behave myself.
good. Veteran ceremony at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday at the high school.
And Parker has one or two if anybody would like to.
Parker's at 2 p.m. That's great, thank you. 8 a.m.
My speech will be short and sweet.
Okay, excellent. Any other public comment? Has anybody joined us on Zoom? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, our consent agenda. The first item under this agenda is to vote to graciously accept a donation for the Huntfield scoreboard. Okay, so we would love, did you want to say a few words?
Sure. Yeah, so Reading Little League would like to donate a brand new scoreboard at Huntfield. The scoreboard that we have there now it's very old. It hasn't worked in a couple of years, and we felt that for the amount of games we play there, and we have basic games, we have district tournament games there, it would be nice to have a operational scoreboard that people can come to the games and know what the score is and not have to,
Right.
ask a million questions. So we would like to donate that to the town.
Wonderful. Board members, do you have any questions?
One quick question. I assume we're allowed to have, it says in memory of Robert Burns Bell on it, correct?
That's what the current scoreboard says. I assume that we would just continue to keep that as I'm assuming, that was done before Reading Little League came into existence when we were Reading Youth Baseball. So I would just assume to just keep that as a tribute to him.
So not to put you on the spot, I'm not familiar with that gentleman. Okay, but a big
Not either.
Little League, okay, awesome.
I didn't.
Obviously a big
I became
sponsor.
aware of it when I was researching, getting a new scoreboard there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do
thank
we-
you.
Bob, do you think we need everybody to just make sure there aren't any concerns about that? I'm assuming that since it's already been there shouldn't be, but is it worth a quick glance?
I'm sure it's fine, Mark.
Okay. And all set?
Okay, we thank you. Any other questions?
Just thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep,
very
thank
much.
you. That's very generous and it's gonna look great. Thank you for
You're welcome.
putting
Thank
the picture in the
Thank you very
packet.
much.
Okay, next up, we can discuss and vote to waive cemetery fees for veterans. So what I took from the packet, do you wanna say a few things? Okay,
Do
great.
not.
No, come on up.
Good evening. Carl McFadden, 33 Wakefield Street, Chair of the Cemetery Trustees. This was has been brought up for the past couple months, and we really wanted to make it effective for January 1 because we've had a lot of veterans that have passed away recently, and from the paperwork standpoint, the staff asked effective January 1. Essentially what and I believe, has everyone got the email from Kevin Bowmiller?
Yes, that was in the packet.
About the $1,800 the federal government does for the plaque. This is really for the installation of it, and the fee's $100. The actual cost, because the labor is the town labor, whether they're working on the cemetery or putting it in, it's fixed, is really a $4 bag of cement. And we have typically 12 to 15, the World War II veterans, have the majority of them have passed away from that time. We're talking something in the vicinity of 12 to 15, so $1,200 to $1,500 total cost that we would have. It's really, as Kevin put in there, a great final thank you to everyone. And it seems very self-explanatory, for what the veterans have done. And, I don't want to put pressure on you of saying it's a no-brainer, but in terms of, for what the federal government's contributing and, for a $4 bag of cement, I think we're in good financial shape to be able to afford that. That's one part. Could I just jump a little bit into a couple other things in reference to the cemetery that we're to talk about? Just, I know you're literally.
We just wanna make sure we stick to the agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's fine. I'm just kind of somewhat giving an overview of, one of the issues that we're having in the cemetery that we hopefully can get out to the media is the fact that, and we've been working with the police department, is that they've had dogs. Dogs have been running crazy on trampling people's graves and stuff like that. And we're just hoping people understand that the dogs are off limits there. And then the last thing, which is exciting, is that we just finished having our meeting, is that we're gonna be coming forward to you guys of actually doing a headstone restoration, because much like you're doing your tour the other day, I'm sure you probably saw a lot of the 1700 headstones that have broken, crumbled, and a lot of the surrounding towns are actually doing it as a way to improve the town's presence, because you know you're going in there to. A lot of people, believe it or not, do visit the cemeteries, if historical aspect, and if you've seen the headstones crumbling down. So we're actually going to be coming to FinCom and the town manager to look for funds to possibly do restoration to improve the cemetery for effective for next July 1st. Just stay tuned.
Any timing on maybe when you might be looking to speak to FinCom and the select board about this?
Well, in January when they're
In
the
January.
budget when the budget time.
Okay.
You know, I'll be speaking with the town manager before then.
I was gonna say you'd wanna
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
as soon as you
December
can.
thing.
Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah,
it's a
before-
December thing, but officially a January thing.
The board will be talking about the budget in December, so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Is that a
Bob will obviously already be doing.
Is that a
more
yes from you?
It's only November. No, it's not on the agenda, so there's no deliberation. Just to give you the heads up.
Yeah, so it's a project that other towns are doing because things are starting to fall apart, shall we say.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you for your time.
May I add a little bit to what Cal said?
So it's not really on our agenda, so keep it
Oh,
quick.
it's
All right.
I'll just conduct it with the burial things. Last year, as you know, last 2 or 3 years, I've been going through all the cemetery records and making sure that each and every veteran is on the records, and I gotta tell you, it's a lot of work. But I found 2 gentlemen that did not have a plaque, and one of them had no relatives. I even wrote up to Nova Scotia to see if I could find a relative. The other one had a nephew, and he says, I can't afford the $100. So that's where this led from. That's $200. And I have to make a declaration, I will be getting one of those plaques eventually, so.
Yeah.
And you can make sure they spell your name right.
If you can save my relatives $100, that's nice. They really have.
Just one quick thing. He turned 91 yesterday. So
Happy
he's
birthday.
he's the oldest cemetery board member we've ever had.
Great. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Carl, he prefers to say it's his 70th anniversary of his 21st birthday.
Exactly.
Right.
There you go. There you go.
No, well, when you come back to see us, maybe you could provide us with a little info on the 2 folks that you discovered, if you want. That'd be nice. Thank you.
No more question. Great.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay, let's see, any questions from the board members? That item.
It's more of, I think the $100 is the least that we could be doing for all of these veterans. I mean, as you mentioned, it's just a bag of cement, but it's even more to them. So I think just the sense of security, knowing that it's one less thing to worry about for family members is a no-brainer for me, and I'm sure everybody else here as well. So, thank you.
Agreed. Okay, next item in our consent agenda would be vote to approve Class 1 license for a Honda ownership change. Bob, did you want to have any further comments? I saw that the police department did a thorough review and is fully supportive of this.
Thanks, Sharon. I can quickly share the screen just to show the board, the police are fine with this applicant. I know the applicant, Brian, is here if you have any questions for him.
Board members, do you have any questions?
Brian, wonder if maybe you could introduce yourself to us.
Hi, I'm Brian Pecci. I'm a compliance manager for Group 1 Auto and looking forward to becoming new residents in Reading with the rest of you.
Great.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Will you be keeping the same brand of Honda? This is gonna be the same flag, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
correct. Just a change in ownership. Everything else is staying the same.
Okay. Super. All right, is that it? And then, the final item on our consent agenda would be to, vote to appoint the volunteers to the other boards and the committees that, the VAS committee has proposed. So, let's scroll
Have a
down.
nice Thanksgiving.
See ya.
Good night.
Sorry.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Such an exciting week. Okay. Is that on? Must be, here's the Honda stuff.
37.
Thank you. Okay, so 27. Okay, great.
So, maybe I could just make a quick comment. So,
Absolutely.
Carlo and I think, were able to appoint every applicant that came in. To at least one committee, in some cases more. Based on their saying that they'd be willing to do it, of course. But it seemed to work really well. There were some very enthusiastic folks, many either new to Reading or new to volunteer boards in
Yeah,
Reading.
yeah.
And it was great, and we had some really good discussions with folks. Folks had interesting backgrounds, and it felt like they could really add a lot to it. So we were able to make suggestions for every single person that came in.
Yeah, a lot of fresh blood. It was, that was a good night. We got a lot done.
So we had one question, and I did speak with the Climate Advisory Committee. They're really excited about the candidate. Did you guys discuss whether Conservation Commission and the Climate Advisory Committee meetings are on the same night? You're intending to?
Oh, that would be problematic, huh?
I'm not sure if it's consistently like that. I do know that a few times I've had to make decisions because it seemed like it would be wonderful for both, and also there'd be, breaking down those information silos between, some boards and committees that should be working together.
So
Let's see, I can,
there's only one person that this is for
Yep.
Walter Talbot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it make sense to allow him to kind of explore the agenda, the different groups, and if they truly are meeting on the same night, maybe he's to pick one committee over the other, and if they meet on different second Tuesday.
Karen, are you saying they do meet on the same night every month?
I definitely have had to choose a couple times. I'm just trying to pull up the website. I guess he has been attending the Climate Advisory Committee, so I could be wrong. But that was what David Zeke brought up, that they do tend to conflict. Let's see, the 10th, Climate Advisory and Historic Commission both start at 7.
But no conservation.
Both Conservation and Climate Advisory
Oh,
start at 7
Conservation.
tomorrow night, actually. And then, let's see, go back. October 13th, Climate and Conservation starting at 7. And on the 27th, Conservation and Climate starting at 7.
We do not look into that.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
No,
Yep.
I didn't look at it.
Okay. Yeah, so
We
that was,
trusted Walter.
I know.
It's possible that the committees could arrange their schedules, even if they, either skipped a week or met 2 weeks in a row, they could kind of
Offset.
alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should appoint and then maybe
See how it goes.
flush it out.
Okay, if that's okay.
So,
Bob, is that allowable?
Yeah, that's fine. I agree with Ann that in the past, boards and committees for the last 18 months have met when they can. But to the extent they both want to meet on Wednesdays, usually the Land Use Board has less flexibility, so CONSACOM, but if the Climate Advisory Committee could stagger it and go every other week in between, or if they do once a month, just on a different night, that would work out. But it's really up to those committees.
Yeah, they could possibly do that. Conservation in October had 3 meetings, and those have been long meetings, but Climate Advisory, I think, only met on the 13th and the 27th. Yep, so they might be able to do that. Okay, I would be fine with that approach. Okay, so those are all of the items on our consent agenda. So I would entertain a motion.
so just a quick question. So I think the consent agenda is great. The one question is on the Class 1 license, there is a contingency based upon receival of closing documents, including the final executed lease and the signed Section 58 Class 1 contract. If we just approve the consent agenda, is that incorporated, or do we need to call that out?
I've shared the screen of the motions. It will be understood if you just approve the whole consent agenda that these 3 individual motions will have been made.
for the floor
Can you
motion.
see them okay?
Yeah,
Contingent
it's actually
upon-
four motions, right? Including
Vask.
Vask. Yeah.
Oh, and Vask, sorry, yep, and these ones down here for Vask.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, in that case, move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0, very good.
Welcome to Reading, folks.
Happy selling.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, 8:00, 7:46. Wow. Does anyone need a break? We're like a few minutes ahead. This is
Let's keep
awesome.
going.
Okay, okay. Ivry has joined us. Ivry, you're so smart to get here early, because sometimes we run
Sorry,
ahead.
if anyone needs a break, we can have a break. Let's not quit while we're ahead, right?
Yep, it works for me. Okay, so next item is discuss and vote on a mediation process with Mr. Duval. And Ivry has been keeping us updated on conversations with the Attorney General. And I'd like to turn it over to you at this point, Ivry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. So there are two issues to discuss tonight in regards to Mr. Duval and his open meeting law complaints. The first is the board's response to Mr. Duval's 10th complaint that was filed on October 27th. And then the second matter to address is the status of the mediation process. So first, the board needs to decide whether it wants to mediate his 10th complaint along with complaints 5 through 9. From a legal perspective, I would suggest that to the extent the board does elect tonight to continue on with the mediation, that complaint 10 be included and that this board seek to mediate it on the same terms and conditions as complaints 5 through 9. So as to the mediation process itself, I'm just going to summarize where we left off last time. As you may recall, at the last meeting, the board finalized its conditions around mediation. 1, that the meeting be held in hybrid executive session. 2, that there be no recording of the meeting in executive session. And 3, that the mediation be held in January. In response to that, Mr. Tubble shared that he stood by his original position that the mediation should be in person, recorded, and held as soon as possible. The mediator responded to that email from Mr. Tubble by saying that to the extent the parties want to move forward with mediation, it should be held as follows. 1, in hybrid, with all members of the select board present, aside from those prohibited from participating under the under the conflict of interest law, so this would be Anne, or if there was an emergency matter or sickness. And then 2, there will be no recording of the meeting. However, the board should permit Mr. Tubble to review the minutes prior to release, and to the extent that he has edits, either amend the minutes or include an addendum to the minutes written by Mr. Tubble. And 3, that the mediation session be held in January on a Saturday. Mr. Tubble responded by agreeing to these terms and stating that he is free every Saturday in January. So I think we can, what we need to talk about tonight is, the second condition, that while there won't be any recording, the board is being asked to allow Mr. Tubble to review the minutes immediately prior to the minutes release, and to the extent he has edits, either amend the minutes or include an addendum. This is really a policy decision for the board. I feel like the mediator affirmed the reasonableness of the board's position. So to the extent the board still wants to move forward with mediation, I think these conditions are legally acceptable. But again, it's a policy decision for the board. I do note that January is a bit tight. I was alerted that one select board member is unavailable the last weekend in January. The Massachusetts Municipal Association's annual conference is being held on January 21st, or the 22nd, whatever the Saturday is. Sorry, I'm blanking right now. And then Martin Luther King weekend is the weekend of the 15th. So to the extent that the board is looking at the calendar, January 8th is the only other Saturday that would be free. So I'm available to answer any questions, but like I said, I think this is really a policy decision for this body to be making.
So 2 questions. One, I'm sorry, did you say the 29th was not possible?
I believe that one select board member
Is away.
is
Sorry. Okay,
unavailable
got it.
that weekend,
Okay,
and that
so
select
the
board
8th.
member is free to speak to that.
No, 8th is fine. Okay, sorry. So the real question then is what, the notion of an addendum is way outside policy. And I'm not sure that there's a way to understand what it could or could not include. It sounds like as written, it could include anything, accurate or inaccurate. And I don't see how that's in our interest.
Right, so I think that to the extent the board doesn't accept the amendments to the minutes proposed by Mr. Tubble, and then he has to write the addendum, the official record of the meeting is still the minutes that are approved by the board. So this would be simply like a letter that was used during the meeting and becomes part of the record of that meeting. It would just be appended, in my understanding, it would just be appended to the minutes so that it would be provided to someone upon request. But from a legal perspective, the minutes is what the board would approve in that case. So I recognize the fact that, it's a document that the select board wouldn't have control over, that would be included with its minutes, but to the extent that, other documents are included in the board packet, it's somewhat similar to that, in that regard.
So is it, in that case, limited in terms of its scope? I guess my concern is that if it were to reflect things that aren't accurate, that the board hasn't agreed to, but it gets published, it could violate the confidentiality of the discussion. It could do all sorts of things that would be not okay. And even if it's inaccurate, I'm not sure that there's any limitation on it. And I don't see how that's in our interest. It feels like the reason that we do the minutes is to get an accurate reflection of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why we go beyond that.
Yeah, so the board has a couple options. One, you could always request that there be a negotiation or a dialogue about any addendum. I think that would maybe just result in additional back and forth. I think option 2 is to accept the condition as proposed by the mediator. I do want to bring the board's attention to the fact that there is a confidentiality agreement that will be signed. So to the extent that the addendum is drafted in a way that breaches that, that would be problematic. We could put conditions on the addendum that we have the ability to review it, and if we believe that it breaches that confidentiality agreement, that that we don't have to include it. But at this point, the minutes would be released, so it would be hard to imagine that there would be any confidentiality that still exists at the point of release. I mean, we're sort of talking in hypotheticals at this point.
So your guide is that it's okay as proposed?
I think that what we could do is we could, condition if you're concerned about it, we could condition the acceptance of any addendum on a review to make sure that it doesn't violate any terms of the mediation.
Thank you.
Bob?
Thank you. We shared this with Ivrea, and I feel like I should share it with the board. If you're going to meet for 4 to 8 hours on a Saturday, I can't guarantee you that we can staff that for minutes. It could be that the board is going to have to take their own minutes, and especially where it's needed to be turned around that same day, and there will be no recording of the meeting, the minutes become a little bit more important, if you will. So we'll, once you pick a date, we'll try our best to do it, but I just can't guarantee that. It's such an odd request.
And Karen, just going off of Bob's point, if you will, I don't believe the minutes would have to be turned around immediately, Bob. I think we can still continue to work on our schedule, and produce the minutes in accordance with the open meeting laws, 3 meetings or 30 days.
Thanks, Ivrea, but that still would require physical attendance.
So the mediator doesn't, they don't provide any kind of note-taking, or they don't take the note-taking in their role as mediator?
We are responsible for the minutes.
Okay, thanks. Questions? Chris?
Thanks, Karen. So even though I didn't vote to go into executive session for this, the board did. So having said that, going back to what I said before, we voted to go into executive session. And my view is anything that is done within executive session, whatever standards are that fit those parameters, is the exact way that we should be doing this. So if we don't have people editing our minutes or proposing XYZ, then we shouldn't be doing that either. Why are we going to be changing something that has been done the entire time the same way, just because somebody wants it done? I don't feel as if we should be changing anything. Whatever rules and regulations that we follow in executive session is exactly what we should be following. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It is the way it is for a reason. It's worked this way. It should continue to work this way. So I don't know how that changes things. That's my viewpoint, that if we're doing it one way, it's got to be done the one way that we wanted it done. Otherwise, it would just be, just have it in open session and call it a day. So that's what I got.
Like I said, this is really a policy decision for the board. So if the board decides that it's uncomfortable with the request that the mediator made, it can definitely respond by saying, no, we stand by our original position, and, we will not allow any edits to our minutes or an addendum to our minutes.
Carlo?
Thank you. To Mark's point, I think, I'm reading between the lines. When this goes up on his website, what recourse do we have? We have no recourse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, maybe you didn't want to say it, or maybe that's what I heard, but that's what I heard. So, and again, to Chris's point, executive session is executive session, and it's usually just us and you guys in executive session. So this is a different process, and we'll have a mediator. I may or may not be here the 8th. I haven't decided yet. One of my kids, not my responsibility, but needs to be somewhere, and I might take her. Other than that, the MLK weekend, I have an obligation out of state, and the other 2 weekends I am available. But to the point of what we're talking about right now, it hasn't gone great so far. So I'd like to see mediation work, but I agree that we should stick to what we do, and because we have no recourse if he goes outside the bounds, because it's not, he can do whatever he wants. He's a private citizen. We have policies, we're governed by the state and all that stuff, so that's all I have right now.
Did you have any thoughts, or you don't want to comment on that?
I can comment. I think sort of like in terms of meeting, and sort of in the spirit of mediation, I would, if I were acting as a board of one, maybe be okay with the addendum, although not necessarily the edits, because that's like it would be clear in an addendum that was his language and not a board approved synopsis of what went on in executive session. But I said before, and I think I'll stand by, because I won't be there myself, I don't want to agree or vote in favor of any conditions that are gonna make other board members uncomfortable. So if I'm hearing from at least 3 board members that you're not comfortable with agreeing to an addendum, then I won't vote to agree to allowing an addendum if those of you who are actually going to be there are not comfortable with that. So.
Okay, so we have never had to do an open meeting law mediation process before, so I do think it's different than what we usually do as a board. The points are taken that the addendum could be public, but as far as I understand, we can, at some point, we can allow the executive minutes to be public as well. It'll all be a public document someday. And I do keep coming back to the spirit of the mediation is trying to resolve in person this resident's concerns. So I would be fine with an addendum. I feel like we all work on minutes and we come to a resolution, and I don't see that is gonna be a huge sticking point. I think that we could take our own minutes if it came to that. I know Bob and staff will work hard to be there for us. So I'm fine with an addendum. Let's give it a shot.
So just a thought, if the mediation is successful, I doubt that there's gonna be any issues to work around. We'll have kind of figured things out and moved forward. If it's not successful, it goes to the Attorney General for rulings, correct? So I don't understand the need for an addendum. It feels like something that just it's off to the side, it's out of control. If things aren't going well, it's a problem. If things are going great, there's no issue. And our goal is for it to go great, that we're able to reach some kind of a resolution. But if there isn't, I think it goes to the Attorney General, and I don't see a need for an addendum.
So just one comment on that, Mark. If the mediation is unsuccessful, the board then has to respond to complaints 5 through 9, potentially complaint 10, depending on what this board decides tonight. And then Mr. Tubble will have the ability to appeal to the Attorney General's Division of Open Government for additional review of our response. I assume he will, but it will then, I can't say definitively it will cross the desk of the Attorney General. It will turn on whether Walt is satisfied with our response.
Got it. And the essence of that then is that if he files additional information, that's the addendum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that mechanism's already there. We don't need another one. I'm against the addendum.
Thanks, Karen. I know Bob and staff will do their best, but as mentioned, with such an unusual time and request, that I feel that the board will not be able to take our own minutes for potentially long meeting and pay attention and be engaged. I would find that challenging. I wouldn't volunteer any of you know what I accept to do the minutes of a meeting of this nature. So, and if we set a date and we can't get someone to help us with the minutes or do the minutes, then we have to cancel the meeting. That's just my opinion. I'm not gonna do the minutes. I don't feel comfortable, and I wouldn't wanna be responsible for maybe a several-hour meeting to do the minutes and be engaged and listen, and so that's a hypothetical, but it could be a reality on a Saturday.
Do we have the option of hiring a third party?
Ivrea?
I think the answer to that question is yes. And the reason I'm pausing is I'm wondering if we would need permission from Mr. Tubble, but my initial impression is that would be permissible. They would be bound by the confidentiality agreement.
Maybe that's an option.
And that's something I could confirm with the mediator.
I think you should need to put that out there.
Okay, so we need to take a vote on this?
So 2 votes, right? one on complaint number, sorry, just get my notes up. On complaint 10, so should we do that one first? So this motion would be moved that the board seek to mediate complaint 10, filed on October 27th, 2021, on the same terms and conditions as complaints 5 through 9.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? 0. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Okay. Let me just read this for a second. Okay, so the motion that I have here involves allowing for the addendum.
You can modify it.
Yeah, so let's try this.
Well, you don't have to modify it, we vote on it.
You could add another motion, right? If we
Yeah.
make a motion, it passes or it doesn't, and we need to make another motion, we
Yeah.
can do that.
So if we were to suggest that, and I'm going to use Chris's words for a second, it follows the protocol of executive session, then this motion, we wouldn't make this motion. We, in fact, would just come back and say, along the regular terms of executive session.
Yeah, exactly, and I think, I'm not necessarily sure even a motion is needed, because we're just standing by what we decided at the last meeting, that it occur in hybrid and executive session, that there be no recording, and that the mediation be held in January. To the extent you want to clarify the fact, you can move that, the select board agree to proceed with mediation, provided, however, the board does not accept the mediator's suggestion that Mr. Tubble be able to add an addendum to the minutes of the executive session minutes.
Okay, why don't we just take a pulse of the board? Are we inclined to, how are people feeling about allowing the resident to add an addendum to the minutes? Show of hands, yes? Yes? Okay, I'd be the only one that'd be open to us, but so then I'm fine. I'd like to, let's have a unanimous vote that, well, I'm fine. Yeah.
So if you're suggesting we do have a kind of an affirmation of the, or should we just leave it and say we stay?
Yeah, if you want to make an affirmation, just so it's clear for the record, I think that is appropriate.
So move that the board proceed with the mediation under the terms of executive session and not accept an addendum to the minutes.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0.
Great, so I will relay this to the mediator, Mr. Tubble, to the extent that Mr. Tubble is uncomfortable moving forward on these terms, then the board will have to respond to the outstanding open meeting law complaints. And I will also share that January 8th is the preferred date to the extent that it's going to be held in January. And I will confirm that we have the ability to hire a third party to the extent needed to take minutes.
I think in
Town
terms
hall, here,
And if I'm hearing from Carlo, he may or may not be available on the 8th. So it's, making sure that's,
I won't know for a while, unfortunately.
yeah. So,
Okay,
So I know,
Okay.
so,
we can work with the mediator to lock it down, the specific date.
Carla was asking, where would we be holding this? Would you expect, have we talked about that? Is it here?
So it's a hybrid meeting. I defer to the select board on the location.
Okay. We have to vote.
Because it does need to be accessible to the public, so I don't know if town hall can be unlocked on a Saturday or if it makes more sense to have it in a space like the library that is traditionally open on the weekends.
Okay, well, the library can do the hybrid, FinCom can do the hybrid, this can do the hybrid, I don't know what else, staff has tried.
So maybe we can just check the availability of rooms on that date.
Okay,
Okay, very
All right,
good, thank you
thank you.
so much.
thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, this would be an update, a discussion, but not a vote on our ability to execute a purchase and sale agreement for a portion of the land. Well, I don't like the way this is written, sorry.
So let me provide the board with an update. I guess that's probably the best thing to do here. So, Town Council is still working to establish the no restrictions term on Lot 5. Jenny has been working with all the parties to kind of figure out where this is gonna go. It probably won't be part of the purchase and sale between Meadowbrook and Bancroft. But there needs to be some clarity that the restrictions don't apply to Lot 5. So that's what's being worked on right now. There's one other question, which is that usually there'd be an inspection of the land before purchase. If we had exercised the right of first refusal, we would not have been able to do that. It would not have been an option. And so the question is here, is it something that we feel is important to do, or does the board feel that kind of it is what it is? We get to deal with, whatever we find there. So the agreement between Meadowbrook and Bancroft explicitly does not allow for an inspection. So that's kind of where we are. So if we were to want to try to do that, that may take some more negotiation or be an issue. If we're comfortable just kind of letting it go and kind of dealing with what we get, then it's not an issue at all.
Do we have a right to an inspection?
So it's written out of the Meadowbrook Bancroft deal, that's
Supposed to be
right.
stepping into the shoes of the client.
Right.
But we're
yeah.
not
But
stepping.
we're not doing
but
that,
We're not
right.
stepping into the shoes.
So
of
we're in a
the
different situation. So Bancroft could give us that right.
client. They could give a, no, but I'm asking if we have a right. Do we have a right to an inspection?
So I think nominally we do unless it's written out. But so Meadowbrook isn't gonna grant that. It would be up to Bancroft to grant it or not.
Right.
And there's a question. So one of the questions that I raised with town council is, even if we do find something, what happens? I mean, I think we end up remediating it ourselves. I'm not sure there's anything different that happens. I just felt a
Just
little
have a little
strange to kind of just say, yeah, okay, whatever.
Well, it seems like if we did one, we would just be going in eyes open. And we would know what our costs of remediation or whatnot would be and what they are. I think it would be wise to do it if we can, if we have the ability to do an inspection.
So the other part of this is gonna be a time constraint. The timing of the deal is such that Meadowbrook and Bancroft are gonna get their agreement, I think, for November 20th. And we have to have ours November 24th, and then we have to further close by December 31st. So the only time that any possibility would exist is between the 20th and the 24th, after the signing of the first agreement, so that Bancroft has control, and then before the 24th, when we would have to sign. And on the 23rd is our next meeting, so that's when we are gonna have to sign off on things as well. So there's a very small window. We could ask to have it pursued. And then I think we have to come back and kind of see where we are. So my gut was that I think we're gonna, if we had done it the other way, it would be our problem anyway. We may be willing to accept that, but I wanted to ask the board's opinion before pushing.
Carlo?
I just, thank you for the update. I think, from my understanding, the purchase was based on approval not required, lots. So I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that there've been soil tests, there've been perk tests, or, again, I don't know. Did that come up?
So I think there haven't, or to my knowledge, there have not.
Okay, all
It's
right.
not typical. Well, there's sewer down there, so we wouldn't be doing a perk test. What was the other question? Soil tests. It's not really typical, just saying industry
Right,
practice.
that's what I mean, so that it wasn't, so for us, are you talking about just a visual inspection or hire an inspector to, because we know it's already delineated, we know what we're getting. So I'm just trying to find out
Yeah.
thorough visual, a drone, or what,
Well, certainly visual could happen. The question is, you want to go down and see if there are any issues that would impact any improvements that we're making, whether it's parking lot or anything else.
but who would do that? I'm just asking who would do that? We'd hire someone.
We'd have to hire someone to do
Okay.
it. Right.
Right. I think, given what's going there, potentially going there, I guess, I think we're good, but I'm not a professional, so, but if this was just brought to me without me being involved in this process, I would think that we're okay, but obviously that's not, a given. But
I think that if we were to do the inspection and we did find a problem, I think we'd have an option of canceling. But I'm not sure that we have an option of anything else. So if we wanted the lot, we'd have to remediate.
Is your rear lawn, like, what, I mean, and I'm just thinking of like, purchase and sale of a home, if you do an inspection and you see something, then you can go back to the seller and say, well, can you, could you compensate or can you?
you can negotiate, yeah, you can negotiate.
So, but you're saying because of the tight time frame, you don't think there'd be any opportunity for any negotiation or, what if there was like, okay, well, the price will be adjusted slightly because of this issue that was discovered as a part of the inspection.
Could be any of the above, could be that there isn't time to do a test and get results, and if there was, then to do the next step of discussion. But I see Bob has his hand up, he may have an answer.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you. Mark may have just answered. I wanted to make sure that you didn't actually need test results before that 4 or 5 day period, because that could be impossible with procurement law. But to have it by the end of December, I think would be possible.
Oh, no, so I think the answer is it would, that's a great question.
So if you write it into the agreement that's subject to, blah, 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 and if the seller's willing to take that, then you could do that. But I just don't know that we could produce and provide you someone to do that work that fast.
So may I ask a question? Bob, when we purchased the Zani land, what kind of testing did we do?
Say again, Karen,
Did we do testing when we purchased the Zani land?
I don't remember, but we had a full appraiser out there and he did a lot of work, so I don't specifically know. I have a thick report, I don't know what he did.
All right, well, appraisers don't usually test for things. I can comment that when the town sold lots before, this was under the previous town manager, and I do remember him, saying, I just wanna be super, super sure, and I'm gonna go ahead and test for a 21E, which is like looking for, petroleum products, I believe, but, nothing was found, so. Okay, so for the Zani property, we just hired an appraiser to give us an idea of what to negotiate. And that was 15 acres. The other question was, do either of you guys have any idea how long Meadowbrook has owned this property? How old is that club? Is it
It's very old, I couldn't give you a date. Decades.
I mean, yeah, so I'll just say from a professional perspective, people buy residential lots all the time and they don't do all this kind of testing. If you were gonna buy a commercial property,
Commercial, yes.
people do it all the time. For
Residential.
residential lots, forested lots, near wetlands, okay, so, Bob, cover your ears. That lot's a mess. Our water department is next door, so who do you think put it there? Never mind, I'm just kidding. So, it abuts water department in town land, right? So, if there's any like leaching things, who put it there?
Well, so I think the decision for the board is this, there are two options. One is that we could try to negotiate with the seller to get access to the property, at least for a visual, and possibly for some testing. And they can agree or not agree to that. or we can just kind of accept it as is with the note that if it requires remediation, we'll take care of the remediation. Chris has a comment.
Oh, sorry, Chris, go for it.
Thanks, Karen. My view on this, yes, if it was residential, you always get an appraisal. You never know. When I sold my house, the other people got the appraisal. There's mold in the attic. I didn't agree with it, but, mold magically vanished. So for this, I mean, for the visual, I walked into there. It's woods. There's a little pool over to the left, and that's about it. So who knows what's underneath? It could be an Indian burial ground. The Brady Bunch will have an episode there. I don't know. It is what it is. We've spent $450 on it. Why should we spend more money when we could be using that for something else? Now, I understand it might be able to, you end up finding something wrong and then you negotiate back and forth, but I thought it was already a done deal kind of scenario with the way that it was written and whatnot. So I don't see us spending more money. The worst case scenario is we just leave it the way it is. That's all she wrote. It's a forest and it's still there.
I will say the Zani property has debris and stuff. I mean, we bought 15 acres and nobody's really combed it or looked for anything, right? So there's stuff there. I mean, at least this is an acre. If half an acre, someone could do a walk around and you might have already seen if there were cars, rusting cars and trucks.
Oh, no, there's nothing there other than the vernal pool or whatever it is off to the
Yes,
left and everything else. It
probably.
just looks like a typical kind of foresty kind of area. But yeah, if there was a boat there or something it's a different story.
Yeah, so there's no idea. So, I think we have to either decide it's okay to just kind of take it as is, and if there's remediation required, it's on us, or to push hard on this notion of, let's at least get a visual inspection and see what else is possible. Meadowbrook is not willing to grant that because their terms with Bancroft don't allow it. So it'd be up to Bancroft. And I don't think Bancroft has that right until the 20th anyway.
I actually, question, at this point, isn't really our negotiations with Bancroft, not with Meadowbrook?
It is, on this aspect, the Meadowbrook has to allow that Lot 5 doesn't have the same restrictions as the other 4 lots. So that has to also,
Okay, right.
where that's gonna live exactly isn't yet clear, but we know that we have to have that.
Right,
That's the
right.
arrangement. So Meadowbrook somehow has to allow for that to
Right,
happen.
right.
And their attorney, as I understand it, is that they will figure out how to do that.
Okay, all right. I still think it would be, just for an eyes wide open and, possibly a little bit of negotiation to get us, if it seems like there's any remediation and maybe the price could be, I just feel like going in eyes wide open would be good. I don't anticipate there being anything that would cause me at least to say, let's not do this. I actually think the sort of worst case scenario that Chris described is may be the best case scenario, having, preserved open space that may at the end of the day be a best case scenario. So I don't anticipate actually there being anything that would cause me to say let's not do this. I just think having more information and knowledge would be good.
Bob, yeah, I was gonna ask you a question, but go first.
Oh, okay, thanks, Karen. I was thinking of how the board proceeded for Middlesex Ave when we did get permission for a number of us to inspect and granted the building is a lot different than a forest, but a bunch of subject matter experts walked through the building, both facilities and others. I don't see any reason why we couldn't ask folks like a tree warden and conservation administrator, for instance, to just have permission to walk the site and maybe 1 or 2 others.
Yep, it's a great idea. Oh my goodness, what was I just gonna ask you?
That's free if they do it. So it's not gonna cost us
Town
anything.
employees,
Oh, yeah,
correct.
I mean,
Or volunteers.
as long as it's
Yep.
not gonna cost us anything, I have no problem with that. Otherwise if it was gonna cost something, it's better to just put that money towards the project in the end. It's, it's free, it's for me.
And And so Bob, I'm also reminded of the water tank project when they started looking at the site. So when the community comes up with what we wanna do with this and how we're gonna do it, would it naturally follow that? I don't know if do you have to do testing is what I'm asking. Like, so what caused the testing up at the water tank?
Yeah, I would say, if and when it becomes town land, then we absolutely should do all of this work just to make sure we understand what we have. It's a question of, can you do it with someone else's permission when you don't own it and how quickly?
I would
Now,
not let this.
if the board would prefer the land to stay as is, we probably wouldn't bother with that. But if the board, believes we want to look at parking or some of the use, then I suggest we would do that.
So would the board be comfortable if we work with Bancroft to see if they would allow for this tree warden conservation, expert walkthrough to take place when Bancroft can give us permission to do it, which has to be, I believe, after the 20th and before the 23rd, basically, because on the 23rd we have to approve.
And frankly, conservation's already been up there.
Yeah.
Yep. So you may reach out to them, and they could say, oh, we thought we walked it, we're fine. It may just be, if the tree warden has time to go out there.
I think we should ask for that. I'd feel more comfortable if we did that.
So Mark, if you could ask on Monday the 22nd or Tuesday the 23rd during the day, that would be ideal, one of those days. Hopefully it won't snow.
Does the whole board wanna go?
I was already there. It looks like a forest.
We may be doing interviews those days.
Maybe we'll do them in the forest.
Like, you have to start to work early. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so the board is okay, we'll ask this. It sounds reasonable to me, but of course it's up to Bancroft to approve it.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I don't know why they would approve it, but, so I will approach it that way, or excuse me, town council will approach it that way in terms of what's going on. We'll make sure that the no restriction term is worked through between Meadowbrook, Bancroft, and ourselves. And then on the 23rd, we'll need to approve an agreement. So the only fly in the ointment, I think, would be that if we asked for the walkthrough and if Bancroft for some reason said no, I don't know why they would, but if they did.
Yeah, we don't know the answer, but I think in good faith,
It sounds like a good faith
yeah.
arrangement. Okay,
Very
sorry,
good, thank you.
that's the update.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
Super.
Thanks for all your
Can
work
I
on this.
just ask a question of Mark?
Yes.
Is there any legal reason we couldn't ask Meadowbrook for that permission now?
Yeah, so Meadowbrook has indicated that they will not allow it to take place, that they will not, their arrangement doesn't allow for this with Bancroft, and they won't allow for it with us. So it was asked, it's the right question, it was asked and it was answered.
Well, I didn't know if there'd be a difference between town staff as opposed to, someone higher. Maybe there's no real legal difference though.
I can ask Jenny to pursue it that way and see what happens.
And is the difference
Sure.
between permission to test and just permission to take a look?
Either way, we would need permission,
Yeah.
because we don't
Yeah.
own the land, but
Right.
yeah.
Did they say no to both, or do they just like no to testing?
I think we asked about inspection specifically.
Okay.
And that was the response.
Alright. Very good, thank you.
Maybe walkthrough is a better word.
Yeah, walkthrough sounds a lot less.
Yep.
Can you help you
Okay.
rake leaves?
Thank you.
All right. Next up. Okay, next item on our agenda. I see that we have an RMLD commissioner and we have the general manager, and I don't know Mr. Phipps' title, sorry.
Director of Integrated Resources.
That's right, integrated resources, that could be anything. That's what I always
The
think.
wholesale and the retail side of the business.
Wonderful. Thank you all for coming tonight. For those of you watching at home, the climate law was passed earlier in 2021, and it had specific requirements for municipal light plants, and so the commissioner and staff were kind enough to come to the select board and talk about your plans and how it's gonna impact rates and how you're gonna meet the climate law and everything else. So thank you. Do you wanna come up? Who would like to come up?
I think Chair Coulter is going to speak.
Oh, okay, sorry, Bob, I didn't see you there. Welcome to the meeting. So,
Hello.
okay, Bob Coulter, Chair of the RMLD Board of Commissioners, has joined us, hybrid. Thank you for joining us. Sorry about that. The floor is all yours.
Oh, great. I see Colleen and Greg and Dave Talbot are also here this evening. So Karen, I think it's almost like a free form question, Q&A, what you're interested in, but, you mentioned a couple of things, out of the gate. I think the first thing that you touched on is the climate bill. So the climate bill, the impact of the climate bill on, obviously rates in the environment is, the rates at Reading Light are going to be changing over the next year. Right now, the CAB, the CAB, the Citizens Action Board, they've met and they discussed rates, but the actual Board of Commissioners is still to meet to discuss rates, so that's still ongoing right now. So I really, that's on our agenda for the next meeting to change the rates for the budget for Reading Light for next year. So that, I can't really say exactly what's going on because it hasn't been voted on yet. Okay, so but getting back to the climate bill.
So hang on, Bob, if I may. So let me understand this. So rates have been presented to the CAB and they've voted on them, the Citizens Advisory Board? So what rates did they vote on? Because those would be presumably the same rates that you're gonna be discussing? That's what I was kind of hoping you could update us on. Or Marlena or somebody else.
Yes, no, those rates basically, there's gonna be the best place to go for a resource, right, to look at what the rates are projected to be is on the Reading RMLD website. But if you wanted to know the numbers for our rate changes, basically they're going to be
And Colleen sent us.
Colleen, if you want to talk to the exact rates, right now, we're looking at about a 4% and a 2% rate increase on our rate base for residential. I exact numbers.
Mr. Chair, do you want to?
Sure, come on up, thank you.
Can we stand on the dot?
I think,
Yeah, stand on the dot.
Stand on the dot?
well, I think you can sit there because we had someone earlier sit there. I think that works.
So, the rates that were presented to the Citizens Advisory Board that were based on both the climate bill impact, in addition to, our every 3 years class of cost of service, right? So by law, we're supposed to recover production within each of the rate classes, is projected, between 2.2 to 4.7. And the reason why I give you that range is the 2.2 is school, industrial time of use was 3.7, commercial was 3.9, residential time of use A2 was 4.3, and residential A was 4.7. So the reason why they're a little bit different, again, is when you do your class cost of service study, they're being adjusted for not only the rate, but to make sure that each class is the cost of production for that class is being recovered in accordance with the law and the Department of Public Utilities. So that's what was submitted, and I can give it back to Bob. We can talk a little bit about renewable choice. But these haven't been voted on. And the other thing I was just gonna say is we send an email, an 18-month projection for the towns. So while we transition from a fiscal year to a calendar year, the first half of 2022, there'll be no impact to the town because that's being covered by the rate stabilization fund that had grown a little bit high. So we're stabilizing all the rates for the first 6 months. But then as the 18-month projections go forward, so that you can segue into your town budgets, along with the other 3 towns, we'll send out 18-month projections. And we'll try really, really hard, and when I say me, I mean Greg, to make sure that the numbers come in. But 18-month projections in an electric utility right now with all of the changing, with all the moving parts is quite difficult, but I think we do a really good job. So when we give that 18-month, we're intending to get you out to your next fiscal year so that you know what to put in your budget.
Okay, so I found your email that you sent to myself and Bob on the 18th? No, sorry, Thursday, October 28th. So so it sounds like then I'll send it to the rest of the select board, we'll get it in a future
Right.
pocket, and probably the finance committee would wanna see it too.
Because
Thank you.
the board hasn't deliberated yet. So the other thing I was gonna just say is the renewable choice did get voted on a month or so ago, and that allows people to sign up and pay for certain increments of additional green power, right? So the climate bill has decade markers, and what the Board of Commissioners approved was to do increments to prevent rate shock. So we increase every year by 3%, not the rate, but the amount of certificates that we retire, so that there's no rate shock, so it kind of goes on a linear. If you want to look at the website in the red tab, I sent that to Karen, you can, Chair Coulter had asked me to put on there, please put this up so that everyone can follow the rate discussion, so I think you go on there. It's very simple and it gives examples of each of the rate classes and what the bills will look like. But we're looking to have them become effective January 1st. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Bob, I think that the baton is passed back to you.
Okay. Yeah, you can't follow up, Colleen, that's impossible. So, thank you. But, well, Colleen touched on the 18-month projections. I had a couple bullet points to go over. So she does it much better, but the climate bill, 18-month projections. If you talked about a couple of the rate that we have is going to be an opt-in renewable choice. That's what we decided on with Reading Light, an opt-in versus an opt-out. So that renewable choice will be there for folks who want to go all green. So that's an option. I think another thing to mention is an increase in the electrification charge. When you compare, a municipal to an investor-owned utility, right now our electrification charge is only increasing a fraction. It's almost 2 cents a kilowatt hour from a National Grid or an Eversource. In Reading Light, we just ticked it up just a fraction of a cent in order to assist in the base of electrification. So that's going to be another change. As we progress towards a zero carbon emissions by 2050, as Colleen explained, and all the hard work of the folks at Reading Light, they're using basically a linear process. So every year, rather than hit it all in the end or wait till something else changes, the plan is small bites, year after year after year, progress. By 2030, we should be at 50%, and then again continue from 2030 to 2050 to chunk off the next 50%. And knowing it will be getting harder and harder for the last 50% as we continue. I don't know if you had any other questions, Karen, or anybody else.
Well, let's see, before I get to the part about the kind of how we can work together a little bit, I didn't know if the Director of Integrated Resource could give us like the quick high-level bullets on how you guys are gonna get to 50% at 2030 and then beyond, because my understanding for the last meeting I attended is that you have a plan. Thank you.
So good evening. Two quick things to keep in mind.
One, in terms of the plan of getting to a non-carbon, it's a balance of how we buy electricity. And what we typically do, we've been in the habit of purchasing electricity from what are typically known as renewable resources, but with the climate bill, the metric has now changed to non-carbon. So looking forward, the metric is non-carbon. And if you look at the general news, you get a sense of why. So in that context, we're able to, as an MLP, to do long-term power supply contracts. And big picture, power supply has several components in it, but it represents, and the power supply is basically the wholesale purchases of energy and transmission charges and capacity charges and the associated certificates. And we'll talk about the certificates in just a second. But this year, that is 70% of our overall budget, and 30% is the network, the distribution lines, the teams, basically the operating costs. So we spend a lot of time working aggressively to both meet the climate bill, but also the other goal is to provide competitively priced power. So as Chairman Coulter mentioned and Colleen mentioned, part of the goal is making sure that we are compliant with the climate bill and the new metric of non-carbon. So if you look out in the annual report, you'll see pages 17 and 18. Page 18 is a really good graphic to show what we're going to be doing for the next through 2030. Now, we're actually working on contracts that go out 25 years from now. We're constantly in the process of adding new contracts to the portfolio as old contracts expire. And the focus on those contracts is to buy non-carbon. And what non-carbon means is, well, what it means, you need to go to the climate bill to get a real close definition of what it means. But fundamentally, it is basically non-emissions or non-fossil fuel-based energy. And so if you look at our portfolio, it's a combination of nuclear, wind, solar, and hydro. And then the balance of it is what we call mixed, which is primarily natural gas in New England. And so what you're going to see over time, if you look at the chart, you'll see a steady growth, and my apologies for not presenting it here, but basically a steady growth through 2030 to be about 60% non-carbon. Now, the issue becomes, while we buy certificates, we buy power with associated certificates, and that'll be close to 60% by the time we get to 2030, and we're going to continue growing because, as the chairman mentioned, our goal is to ultimately get to 100%. But as we do that, we'll buy those certificates, and then we will basically retire up to what we call the annualized line, and that's what Colleen mentioned, that each year increases 3%. So we started at 20% in 2020, and we're going to go to 50% by 2030. And each year, just so we don't have any rate shock, we're going to basically increment that 3% per year. And so for all of the power below that, we're going to retire non-carbon certificates. And then the certificates that we have already purchased as part of our power agreements above, we're going to sell those certificates. So there's a specific strategy to be compliant. When we when we buy power, we buy certificates with power, and then we have the option to either retire or sell those certificates. And so there's a strategy each year that changes that allows us to get to the 50% compliance basis, yet still minimize the net cost to the customer. And again, you guys all know, right, we are a not-for-profit entity. So the cost study that we went through and the power supply cost, we basically allocate those, as Colleen mentioned, to the appropriate rate classes. That's why we do our cost of service study every 3 years. But there's no profits that go back to any shareholders, right? The shareholders for us is the community. And at the end of the day, our goal is to serve the community with reliable, so the lights are on, cost competitive, and green power. So that's what our mission statement is, and that's what we do. So anyways, big picture, there's a very clear strategy and plan, and what we're really working on right now is beyond 2030, because there is, as the chairman mentioned, this climate bill has fundamentally changed the landscape. Electrification is driving higher load, and what is currently half of the power supply in New England is natural gas, and that is going to be phased out. So half of the supply today is going to go away, and the load's going to double. So the puzzle that we are fascinated with and that we're working on aggressively is how to bridge that three-quarter gap in a nutshell. More questions?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, is the infrastructure gonna be there?
So
support all this.
Yeah, so there's the infrastructure piece, which is the distribution network. So our responsibility is the network within RML territory. And one of the reasons why we moved up particularly the residential side is that the initial load growth, we're basically coming out of a period of flat to slightly negative load growth. And literally this year, we're starting a slow, steady increase due to electrification. And so the team, with Hamid and John, so the team has been doing maintenance and also beginning to do upgrades. And part of the goal for us is to start accelerating the upgrades to handle the increased electrification. And when we make upgrades to the network, when we replace a part of a maintenance program, we're looking 15, 20 years down the road because the equipment we put in now needs to support the load 20 years from now before we replace it. So natural course of running an electric utility. So that's part of the network piece. And then the other side, remember, that's 30%, 25-30% of the cost structure. The other piece is the wholesale supply and making sure that we don't try to minimize any dramatic spikes relative to the cost of energy, which is the other 70 to 75% of the budget. Make sense? So two different pieces.
No, it makes sense. It's gonna be interesting how this all comes together because this is just one entity of many doing the same exact thing.
Well, that brings us into why we're spending a lot of time on the power supply right now, because when you pull away half of the existing power supply, which the climate bill is fundamentally doing, there is going to be a shortage. I'll say so. We're going to be creative in terms of how we fill that gap with non-carbon resources, so solar, and wind, and hydro, and a mix of nuclear. And to the extent we use batteries, et cetera, to shift loads and all that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting puzzle. The more of the utilities are beginning to awake to the competition for these resources that either exist, the existing hydro resources. There won't be any new ones put in place in New England. And so our commissioner knows that over the past year, we've presented 3 separate hydro deals as part of our portfolio. And we're aggressively chasing after some solar projects. And we'll get into our discussion at the commission meeting, our intense interest to allow the state to have the MLPs, not just us, but the other MLPs, be able to participate in the offshore wind, which right now there's basically a barrier for us to do that. So it's a fascinating puzzle, and there's a plan. So the next 10 years are pretty clear, but we're looking beyond 2030 because we got to plan the whole infrastructure. We look long term when we do the utility business.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It's fascinating.
Chris.
Thanks, Karen. It sounds like an expensive puzzle to me, though. If what you're saying is, and to Carlos' point about the demand from everyone else to meet this kind of 2040, 2050 deadline kind of thing, it seems as if there's going to be the people that straggle and wait and don't plan ahead like you're saying that you're doing now. But it just seems as if as you get to the 50% mark that you're mentioning, that's when everyone else is going to be onboarding to try to catch up. And it just seems as if this is going to be a massive price swing. But you're saying the rates will only go up 3%-ish?
Well, so the proposal that we have in place for 2022, so you put them all together, it's 3.9%, which is pretty minor, relatively speaking. I mean, it's a small relative to, and again, the IOUs have a different business model. They can't do long-term contracts. One of the benefits of us having the ability to do long-term contracts is we can basically lock in prices, out 20 years, 25 years in certain cases. Your basic question of, the climate bill is a seismic change. And it is going to drive up the cost of electricity certainly throughout Massachusetts. And that's due to the regulatory change that the climate bill imposed. It's a solvable problem. It will be more expensive over time. It's absolutely true. And that same pattern will probably continue throughout the rest of the United States and the world for that matter.
So
we're not here to solve world peace, just to take care of the ready customers here, and that's our focus.
So how much do we get from fossil fuels now? Is it like 90% or?
So in our portfolio, about 60%. So there's a nice table in the portfolio for 2020.
I can show the table. If I could share screen, I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, try. That'd be great, Bob, if you could. So at the end of the day, about 60% of our portfolio is fossil fuel, really natural gas, and the balance is renewable, on average. And we're gonna get to, by 2030, it'll reverse, it'll be 60 renewable, 40 natural fossil.
That's not it. Sharing his keyboard.
Is that looking? Can you see that?
No?
No.
You can't.
Is Caitlin with us anymore?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
There you
There you go.
Can you make it a little bit bigger, Bob, please?
I'm gonna try.
So Bob, I'm gonna narrate while they have it up there. So this is our 2020 portfolio, so 68 is mixed,
Yeah, if you
right,
go to
for
the
2020. And you can see the stacked bar of, and I'll walk you through this detail, but that stacked bar, you can see how it goes up to, just scroll down a little bit, that's perfect, right? Just a little bit higher, great,
Yeah.
right there. So this is our portfolio mix, right, over time,
Yeah.
right? This is just a percentage mix. It also accounts for the fact that load is continuing to grow, roughly about 1% per year. As we get to 2030, it'll probably go up to 2% per year. And then this is basically the mix of non-carbon resources. And I'll walk you through this shaded thing in just a second. So don't go any further, Bob. So basically natural gas above, we call it mixed, but it's primarily natural gas. There's no coal in our territory anymore. Minimal oil. So it's really natural gas. So our contracts basically take us up to 2024. We're, just somewhere around 65, 68%. And then we have to continue, this space in the upper right-hand corner here are new contracts that we have to fill. All right?
Yeah.
The second thing to keep in mind is this line here, this green line is what we call the annualized line. All right, so 20% in 2020, going to 50% by 2030. Now, the target from the climate bill says by 2030, you need to be at 50%. And it doesn't talk about how to go from 2020 to 2030. But what the commission did basically is said, look, to avoid rate shock, to avoid basically going out to 2029 and then say, here's a huge increase.
Right, yeah.
The decision was to basically migrate. And what the difference is here, these are the certificates that we retire. So every time we buy energy, well, at least in all of those shaded spaces, we buy certificates with the energy. And there's a variety of different certificate types, but at the end of the day, they're all non-carbon. So we buy them with energy, and then we retire these. And then the ones above, these shaded ones, we sell those. And again, so we bought them, and then we go and sell them back in the open market, and that goes right against the fuel charge, or right against our energy charge. So this is what we're buying, we sell these, we retire these, and so this ends up being the net cost, and it goes up 3% per year. So you'll see over time, because we're selling fewer over time, that's another, just driven purely by the requirement of the climate bill to get to 50%, that's increasing the cost of energy for the ratepayers. And again, the good news is those are all long-term contracts, so the prices are known, right? And if you look up here in 2021, right, less than 10% is open market. 2022, this is a 2020 snapshot, so that's a little bit higher now. There's about 7 or 8% open, roughly, somewhere between 5 and 10%, depending upon which month we're in. Because our load also changes by season. January load is much different than August load. So anyways, it's a fascinating piece of business.
It definitely seems as if this was me owning electric on the back end, knowing by 2050, you have to be XYZ.
100%.
What incentive do I have to give you any sort of a discount or mitigate anything when I could just jack up the price? Because you have to meet the demand, and we're in New England, we're not gonna get electric from Alaska or something like that, right? So it seems as if you're at the mercy of whoever you're buying it from.
You just
go ahead.
define capitalism.
Yeah, it's just seems.
That's it. And it's not just Reading Light, it's everybody. It's every MOU, IOU, it's every electric utility, right? They're forcing a change in generation. And people are out there, so you gotta scramble. So that's where Greg and Colleen are unbelievable. This plan that they've laid out, we worked and everybody has worked on. Basically carries you to 2030 with some stability versus just a shock at some point, so.
One related piece is that MLPs, unlike IOUs, have the ability to own assets, generating assets. So one of the other things that we have some assets already at one of our substations, but part of our plan going forward is to buy assets so that we are not at the mercy as much, right? We can't have assets, let me say we can't. It's not feasible. There's a big puzzle in terms of what assets we can and can't own. But one of the things that the strategy we have going forward within the RMLD is to start owning part of the assets so that basically we're not exposed to the value pricing tied to the market because they'll become limited supply going forward in
You're not as
time.
reliant, right.
Pardon me?
You're not as reliant. You are
Right, and so-
more self-sustaining.
So one of the things that we put into our policy 30, Rev 1, is the ability to make buy. So we're currently buying the vast majority, but we're gonna basically be in a position where we can start making our own energy, which means it's only generation assets. So there's a lot of work that has to be done there, but as the chairman mentioned, the climate bill is a seismic change. The good news is it doesn't have to happen overnight, but we need to move now, and that's what we're doing. The good news is the RMLD has enough scale and scope and resources to be able to anticipate, look ahead, and not be, oh, I missed that, right? So we're trying to look forward.
What kind of assets are you gonna buy or make?
So the most logical ones that we would start with would be solar assets. And the benefit of solar assets is the maintenance is fairly simple, the technology is fairly established, the soft cost in terms of installation, et cetera. One of the things that we're starting to do is look for opportunities to install assets within our territory, so within the towns that we serve. The reality is there's very limited capability because solar spreads out, it takes land, and there's not a lot of open space. So where we can, we're gonna try and fill in, that might fill 10% of our portfolio. And then we'll start looking, in parallel, we're also looking outside of our territory to own assets, and typically, what we'll probably do is own assets in combination with a couple of other MLPs in the same situation that we are.
Like buy into a solar farm?
Right, for example, the solar farm would be a very good example, a near-term example. So we're gonna, so that's the strategy going forward to help mitigate it. But you're right, there's increase, we're moving from the generators have been selling at the margin, and the world is beginning to change, particularly for the non-carbon assets where they can start selling at value prices, and we've already seen the upward pressure on that.
So, Greg, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
The idea of electrification. So 3 years ago, when we were having this discussion, it was, woe is me, demand is dropping. What are we gonna do? Electrification is the answer. So here we are 3 years hence, 4 years hence, 5 years hence.
Yeah.
And so we're facing this kind of supply change. Is the push toward electrification by RMLD still, strong? I mean, you mentioned I think 1% per year.
Yes. So one of the things to keep in mind for electrification, besides what the climate bill did is it basically, the metric is relative to sales, not purchases. So creative thinking, whoever put that little piece in place, which means we have to drive the electrification. So if you look at our incentive program, the rebates, the commercial incentives, et cetera. In fact, tonight while we were doing this, there was another second one we did this year, air source heat pump webinar that finished about 45 minutes ago. So there's a lot of not only put the incentives in place, but also to educate the customer base in terms of areas for electrification. The other thing to keep in mind, and not to get too much detail, but if you look at the shape of our load curve, it's lower in the middle of the night than it is in the afternoon. So one of the elements is the electrification tied to EVs, electric vehicles. And so one of the things that we basically approved, and we're literally right now working through the details of how to get it implemented for January 1st, is what we call our A3 rate, which is intended to have a very discounted rate in the middle of the night to encourage people to adopt AVs because the relative cost is there. And again, our debate is not, is climate change real or not? It is, we're basically adhering to the climate bill, which is driving electrification. So now we're trying to fill a portion of our infrastructure that already exists. Carlo, back to your point. and basically put some load growth there. By doing that, we have less upward you get it, right? Less, upward pressure on the unit price. Because I'm not building out any addition. We'll have to build out the network to let the whole curve adjust. But right now, we're trying to fill that pocket there with existing assets, distribution assets.
So when you think about heat pumps and other electric HVAC kind of stuff.
Yes.
So that's peak load, right?
So the air source heat pumps is basically building heating and cooling, and fundamentally that will basically just shift the whole curve up, all of the curve, because we're basically taking what used to be a natural gas or oil, a lot of oil in our territory, and replacing electricity. And typically, people tend to drop, a little bit heat in the middle of the night and a little bit more in the afternoon. And obviously in the middle of the afternoon, you have higher heat loads in the summertime for cooling, but the curve will basically shift up. What we're really trying to do is to provide the mechanisms and the control and the incentives for the customers to change their behaviors and give them more choice, but try and flatten that curve, which now means we maximize the capacity utilization, back to your point, Carlos, of our distribution network. That's what we're trying to get to. It's going to take time, but the interesting thing is EV gives us a great pocket to do that, and we've got a rate structure that we think will work. We're going to try it, and we'll make adjustments to it. It won't be perfect, but that's the intention.
That's great.
I just had one other thing. So since I work in IT and technology changes every single year, and probably 2 minutes ago, something else changed. I'm not as familiar with electric and transformers and all this other stuff. Like thinking ahead into like 2040, I can't even begin to imagine what that's going to look like. Is there kind of a standard way that electric stuff is working that it's going to be there regardless? Or like, is there a chance or opportunity for something better to have been created? Or like, I just see it as, solar came out of nowhere to a point. And is there something else coming beyond that now you just put all your eggs in something else?
Well, to that second point, one of the things that we do, and it's part of the reliability mission statement, is to manage risk, right? And the risk is supply risk and cost risk, et cetera. So we work aggressively to minimize risk, so that if something doesn't work right, it's not, the sky hasn't fallen. So we do that as it's risk management, basic business strategy, particularly for a utility, because people assume the lights are going to be on, right? And I say the lights are on, the electricity is going to be running. In terms of the change, there's continual, so none of us has the crystal ball, but transformers, there's incremental improvements in transformers and wires and the conductivity, but the distribution network has to be in place, short of somebody coming up with a wireless way and, to transmit electricity. But beyond that, the distribution network needs to be in place. So that's the core of the assets for RMLD. And then as we start adding generation assets, there'll be improvements there. It's unclear where the generation change is going to happen, but where there will be change is the ability to control. So one of the things that you guys have experienced, right? You all have mobile phones, and it's amazing all the things you can do on your mobile phones, right? And so one of the things that we're doing right now is using that technology to give more control for the customer to change their behavior in terms of when they use electricity, and to make an educated decision in terms of, here's what I'm trading off. And so the typical trade-off is, here's the cost. And we'll do some very creative business models that drive behavior changes, but from a basic core technology, we still need wires, we still need transformers, we still need to get the electricity from point A to point B being individual homes and individual buildings. And at the end of the day, we stop at the meter. We let the individual building owners manage it, getting from the meter or from the transformer to the lights. The light change, from incandescent to fluorescent to LED, that transition's happened. And so that, the other things we kind of focus on is energy efficiency. So the lighting one's done. We were used to be 28% of total load was lighting, is now less than 10. And even if you cut it in half, there's another 4 or 5%. That dramatic change isn't there. The heating of the homes and the cooling of the homes is the next place, and that's where the air source heat pumps come in. And that's basically, as opposed to generating heat In the case of the wintertime, we're now moving heat from the outside inside and vice versa. So much more efficient way to do it. So that's another piece. The efficiency piece is going to be another place where it changes, but I think the biggest one is going to be in controls. And that's where, if you're in the IT industry, it's, you know, it's basically inexpensive sensors, monitoring, and the ability to turn things, and literally turn things on and off remotely.
And my last question, if I could, is there a penalty if you don't get 50% by 2030 or 2050, the 100%? Is there like,
There
you're
is.
charged $1 million a day or something?
It's called the ACP, the Alternate Compliance Payment. So we will get charged, right now it's set at $10 a megawatt hour for every megawatt that we sell that's not in compliance, starting in 2030. To put that in perspective, an average megawatt hour is roughly, wholesale is roughly about $40 to $45 a megawatt hour. So it's not a huge penalty, but for the MLPs, it's the very first time, A, that we have a compliance regulation that we have to meet, and B, there's a penalty if we don't meet it. So yeah, there's teeth in the bill. But regardless, you know, as you can see, right, from what Chairman Coulter put up, we're being aggressive in terms of being able to being ahead of the game and giving ourselves flexibility. That space in the slashed lines, the hashtag, not the hash, but the hash lines, gives us flexibility. If we need to make changes in the middle of it, we've got room to do that. We're not, oh shoot, right? So we've got flexibility built into it, which is good.
It's good to see that, the planning and everything that you have there, so.
We got a strong team, so,
Yeah.
and a good commission to, you know, put guardrails up and then we execute.
So change is tricky, trickier than changing light bulbs. Will you be able to help Reading and our municipal transitions when we look at our buildings about, you know, how are we gonna reduce our reliance on natural gas?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So we, as you know, we support, you know, 4 towns, right? And the programs we look at, so we look at programs that fit the residential side, the commercial side, the industrial side, and the municipal side, and obviously the municipal is part of the school. So we have programs in place right now. We're always, you know, the idea behind program is to change behavior. So think of it as a flywheel. So the air source heat pump, we have a very aggressive rebate program with air source heat pumps. And the intention, and just for ballpark, roughly in our territory, there's about 1,200 new furnaces put in every year, roughly. And we'll end up this year at about 300 new air source heat pump applications. We want to keep ratcheting that up, but maybe next year or the year after, we'll take that rebate and bring that back down and put those incentives in other parts that drive different kind of behavior. Because the idea behind an incentive is to get people to start thinking differently. And right now, air source heat pumps is, oh, that's kind of new and different. Hey, I need a new furnace. I'm going to do what I did last year, or not last year, but I did 20 years ago because my contractor says, hey, all that air source heat pump is really neat, cool, but it's really still leading edge. You ought to do something real, you know, stable and basic. Part of the goal for us is to engage the whole supply chain. Not supply chain, what you see in the news, but the different people that influence the customer behaviors. Because furnaces and air conditioning systems are not something you buy every day. You buy them once every 20 years, maybe 15, maybe 25 years. So you need somebody to coach you. We want to be in the position of educating the customers, but not designing their systems, right? We're careful not to design systems within the home or within the buildings, but to give them incentives to help direct them to make the choice, to make it economically interesting to move in a certain direction without mandating. Make sense?
Yeah, not on the municipal side or the
So the municipal part, so we look at those as another set of buildings in reality. And the program, we have a series of commercial incentive programs. But we also have on the commercial side, the custom incentive program, which is very, very generous. It's up to 50% of the cost of energy efficient systems, or not, I'll say energy efficient right now. There's a limit of $50,000 per project. We're reevaluating that in the context of the more industrials and the larger loads in terms of the municipal buildings as well. So at the end of the day, again, we're not for profit. Our focus is to serve the community, but the metric that we have is electricity. And on that note, we're really focused on how do you make it easier for the customers to change their behavior, to use it as efficiently as possible. And then our job is to source it as efficiently, as cost effectively as we can, and make sure it's always there.
Mark?
Just to follow up on Karen's point, I think you need to get kind of your first customers before the ball starts rolling.
Say that again.
You need to get your first customers on the, let's call it the municipal side. You need to kind of get that ball rolling. You were talking about moving incentives.
Yeah.
Different places. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, are there ways where the town and RMLD can work together toward kind of getting that ball rolling and thinking about things? Because I think that there's a lot of inertia, just to kind of put it on the table.
Slow inertia, right, not accelerate inertia. When you say inertia.
Right, sorry,
don't say anything. Okay.
Sorry, I'm thinking about more the pullback, more the gravitational force to the mother base.
Yeah.
So how do we work together to help move that forward?
I a lot of communication back and forth, right? And you know, I know Colleen and Bob are trying to more and more communication between our various departments. You know, all the different teams have, you know, full plates. And what we're trying to do on our end is prioritize where there's the biggest leverage in the context of what we're being measured to do. And again, we go back to our mission, right? Reliable, competitively priced, green. So we're driven on that, and now we have the climate bill overlay on top of that. So I think there are lots of opportunities, both from the equipment that's used, right? Which goes back, and air source heat pump is a great example. And also in terms of the generating assets, right? The rooftops in schools, for example. You know, there's, Joe Huggins was mentioning there's a couple new roofs on it. So one of the things we want to do there is see where there's an opportunity, and we have to figure out, you know, from a business perspective, from both the towns and from the RMLD, you know, what makes the most sense in terms of the ownership. Sizing's pretty straightforward, right? But now, you know, what's the business model? And so back to the comment I made to Mr. Haley, Commissioner to Selectman Haley, is, you know, think about different business models. So we're looking at that side of the equation, because at the end of the day, the metric is dollars. I mean, yes, we have to be compliant, but people make decisions. You've got budgets, we've got budgets, and at the end of the day, that's the metric we look at. So trying to figure out, at the end of the day, how to optimize those in the context of time and still meet the climate bill is how we look at it. So there's lots of opportunities, and I think the communication is step one, and more of it. So it's not like it's not like it hasn't been there, but accelerate.
No, I think you're spot on, and I think also advanced planning, because there are going to be potentially some new buildings, substantial buildings.
Yes.
And thinking far enough in advance to figure out what we can do to kind of work together.
And those kind of things, so I'll be respectful of time, those also have an implication in terms of how we think about our distribution network to feed those buildings. So it's not just the building themselves, but, you know, one of the things is from a distribution perspective, how we make sure that we can anticipate what the load is now and what it will probably become 20 years down the road, because we got to think 20 years down the road.
Yep, the earlier
For
the
commercial
better.
and municipal.
Yes.
Those are the big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, municipal, there's a lot of opportunity in the municipal space. And we're supporting, in fact, right before we came, our data for the green communities. So we're trying to get all that baseline material in there as well. My apologies for the delay.
No, that was awesome. Thank you very
No,
much.
thank you. That was fascinating stuff.
Really interesting.
It is fascinating.
No, it really is. So much to do.
Oh, they're gonna be
There's so
fighting
much
me
to
for the RMLD liaison next year, see? Told ya. Okay. So,
So we gotta roll
thank you.
backward now. and then-
Well, hang on, one more thing. Colleen and I had a discussion, and I told her I was dying to see the inside of the RMLD building and the historical building back there, and then she promised me a tour, and then we started talking, so I didn't know if you had a chance to think about inviting the select board on a tour?
Yeah, I think it would be a great idea. I know economic development of the 230 Ash Street has been a focus of the town for, since I've been here, which is going on 9 years. And so I know I've had a number of conversations with my commission, and I think maybe, I know a lot of visions have been put out there. I think maybe it would be a good idea if you guys came down and maybe we had a walk through the campus so that you can kind of understand what is the shape of Station 1, what kind of dollars had been studied prior to me getting there in order to bring that up to human occupancy, if you would. And then also our operations building and the Barbas building where we rent an acre of space for putting our stuff in, just to give you an idea. And at the same time, I'm working with my commission as well, but I think in order to move forward, we need to communicate about what is the goals going forward. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been very careful about any dollars spent on fixing any of the buildings down there and only doing the things that are, keep our employees safe and healthy. But there are other things that need to be fixed, and I don't want to go in that direction and ask the commission for money to do that if we might be moving or whatever. So I think we should start with a tour. And if you're so inclined, we could even stop in the control room if you haven't seen our new outage management system and IVR system. I think that would be great, if that's okay. And then
awesome.
maybe plan a joint meeting after that between the board and the commission to kind of talk about the economic development going forward, because I know they're dying to give me my next goal, and I don't know, we need to kind of shape that in order for it to make sense to all the parties, so.
They're on a calendar year now.
Yeah.
We're at different
Right,
calendars.
And I don't want to leave without my EV license, so.
No, absolutely not. I apologize, Mark pointed out to me, but you guys were already here, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, you're not leaving without an EV license, I don't think.
Okay.
So were you still thinking like just trying to propose something in December?
Right, I'm thinking maybe first week of December, try to get out there before it snows, if that works for everyone. I can have Erica send out a doodle poll
Okay.
to
that's a great
Bob
idea.
and to the select board and to my commissioners, and we'll try to capture the most people. If there's specific people that you absolutely want them to be there, we can mark that down and make sure that those days work for them.
Well, I'd asked Bob if he wanted any of the planning staff, and he thought that might be a good idea to run that by
Okay.
them.
Well, I'll ask Bob whoever he wants to add, and we can put that on the doodle poll.
Site.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
And just to close the loop for everybody, if you guys weren't following that part of the discussion, I'm not sure if you were, but the notion that the Ash Street property, Bob, you'll watch me make sure I don't step on it here, but conceivably, that could become a developable piece of land for the town if there were another location that was appropriate to RMLD. They're not locked into that location in particular, but they have some particular needs. So I just wanted to make sure that that's what was kind of being vaguely referenced.
Alright, so if we're done with that presentation, I did accidentally skip over the EV license, so I did wanna go back to that. So I'd like to thank, I've been working on this with Bob and, Attorney Merrill, Jenny, and, Colleen, thank you, and myself, to just really, most of the agreement was there, and we just had some terms and things, and where this is it's kind of a new agreement, and frankly, if I step back a little bit, Colleen made some calls to her colleagues, and as well, I reached out to Marlena, one of our commissioners, and I made some calls to other municipal light plants to see how they worked it out, and everybody's doing it differently. I think Peabody told me, oh, we don't have any chargers on municipal land, so it's not even an issue for us. I think it was Concord who said we own one MLP to one town, not dealing with 4 towns, so they're like, we didn't even put a license in place, we just told them go for it, we have a meeting once a week, so that's what I went back to Colleen saying, wow, everybody's really doing their own thing, but, so this license form seems to be an acceptable form for the town and for Reading Municipal Light, and I believe it was last presented to us, it was for a period of 30 years, and Colleen suggested, well, let's do it to 15 years, and key points, I don't know if we have Attorney Merrill. Bob, do we have Attorney Merrill on the line?
I don't think so.
Okay, so some of the other key changes, there weren't a lot of them. So there's like a right to terminate on either side with sufficient notice, I think it was 90 days. Oh, yeah, go ahead, sure.
Very
Yep.
quickly, so.
Thanks.
So instead of 30 years, it's 15 years that will guarantee that you'll have EV chargers that are appropriate, technologically appropriate for the time. We will pay for all the operating and maintenance costs and all the software that goes with an ability to use, your iPhone to find a charger. We went from 30 years to 15 years with then a 1-year add-on if acceptable.
Automatic renewal.
If the town were to say, we want you to remove them in a particular location, we would split the cost of any grant money we got just in the first 3 years. That is what the grant covers. We would split that cost back to the state. And then after that, if you were to ask me to remove them within the 15 years, the RMLD would pay for all the costs to remove the equipment, and the town would pay for resurfacing. And so that's what we settled on, and I think went well, and now we can go get closer to issuing the construction bid. So thank you so much for working with me, Karen.
Yeah, great, thank you. So yeah, any questions from board members? Chris?
Thanks, Aaron. So Colleen, I guess in looking at this now, my only gripe is that outside of Christopher's, it looks as if, I thought one spot was gonna get restriped towards the end, but it looks as if we are losing a spot and then 2 other spots are becoming electric vehicles only. Is that the case? Because then technically we're losing 3 normal spots outside of Christopher's, which is right there on Main Street in Bank of America.
Actually, the grant requirement for this particular grant, and not all the other grants have been the same, this particular grant requires a 5-foot and a 3-foot hatch for American disabilities. And so you can have that 8 feet as one hatched area, or you could do a 5 and a 3-foot hatched area. But since typical spaces are 8 feet, you're just losing one spot. So,
Yeah, so that's, so showing you on the Christopher's one where we're losing the spot that's there. So I didn't know that was part of the grant that you would end up having those regulations. But I guess the other thing is, I mentioned at the last meeting about it being electric vehicles only in those spots. Now, obviously that makes sense because it's the electric charging thing, but just in that specific location, losing those spots to electric only seems detrimental to the businesses that are over there.
well,
So just to back up, like the staff has vetted these spots, like this has been going on for over a year.
Right.
These have been very vetted spots, but they were in the works for a long time, even before Park was conceived.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree, but it's the same thing for Park where I have a business over there and I see things differently than the way that it's been presented to me before because I'm there all day, every day, sometimes on the weekend. This, ironically, with the Christopher's example, I went to Fusion on Sunday morning, the cafe across the street from there, and a Reading resident came in and said that they didn't go to Christopher's because there was no parking over there, and then they got the last spot over there before they would end up having to go to Wakefield. So I'm well aware that there's, stuff has been vetted, et cetera, but in actuality, it doesn't seem to be the case. And I would hate for us to lose these 2 spots to just being electric
I need
only.
a place to park my car when I go to Christopher's.
But
And you're pretty gonna buy an EV too, and then you're gonna have a place to park your car. So I mean, it's a different way of looking at things, but
it is, but
kind of like this in every town. It is gonna, you're raising, I know you're all parking focused, I know.
It's not, it's more of, I would say, was anybody notified about it, but I'm sure there was 30 meetings regarding this. It's more of, I would just, that's why at the last meeting when you were here, I brought it up, are they gonna be electric only spots? And now seeing it actually on here, that they're becoming electric only according to this, and just losing 3, just seems, for the other locations, the library, it doesn't matter. And then down at the train station, there's like 500 spots, but for here, it's just difficult for me to be.
I think the concern is that you're viewing it as losing 3. You're not. You're losing 1, and you're encouraging electric vehicles to park there. But the notion that they're no longer spots is just, that's what has to change. There are a bunch of EVs in town. There are a bunch of people who have EVs. My best example is whenever I'm over in Linfield, I'm taking a look there, and there's a line of all the chargers in terms of what's going on. And they're going there, and you know what? They walk 2 blocks to wherever they have to get to.
Yeah.
They can do it.
But Linfield is a destination and you know that. That's why I would be going there.
I'll tell you, I'm driving down
Christopher's.
128, I need to charge my car.
I'd like to think of Christopher's as a destination,
No, but it
yes,
will
but
be. This is the
I
way.
just, I find it hard to believe that at the low amount of vehicles that we have, randomly, they're going to go to Christopher's now because of it.
Oh, you bet they will.
I just-
I need a place to grab a cup of coffee. I need 20 minutes to charge, a half an hour to charge, and I'm looking on that map, and I'm not the only one. I'm like, well, is it in the, okay, no offense to you guys. Like, oh, damn, the only one in Reading is near RMLD, and there's nothing near there, so, So now I'm gonna say, oh, good, there's one at Christopher's, yay! There I go, and I have my breakfast, and my car is charged, and I'm out of there.
But you know where the charger is, you just drive home and there's your charger. I don't
I
understand
know,
why you would
pretend
be
Reading is
trying.
like any other town, like
I just-
it's actually a
To
charge
me,
with your
in
business.
that specific location, it is losing spots to me. Only, that's my opinion on it, and I'm one of 5 people.
Understood, thank you.
The only question I have is, I think anywhere you put those spots, you'll be able to make the same case. That it's in front of my business, that I've just lost those spots.
Or town hall,
Or
or out here, those would be
All possibles, but these are the ones that
Yeah,
were vetted as being the most appropriate to it. And I think, look, we're working on parking. It's an issue of more than 2 spots, and I completely agree. I hate seeing spots disappear. We don't have them to give. That's the reality. I completely agree with that. But I think we're kind of taking a step forward with this. We're creating a couple of destination locations, if you will, that are perfect for our downtown. And it's kind of on us in terms of economic development to let people know that they're there and come on down. It's time. You don't have to go to Linfield.
Yeah, you don't have to go to Linfield, because people right now are heading right by Reading, because I'm not gonna go park in LMD parking lot and like hang out there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So I'm going right to Linfield. Maybe you guys wanna open a vending machine or something, like, I don't know.
I guess my thing is, with us agreeing to this, is that we are agreeing that they are electric vehicle only spots as well.
That's how it works.
Or,
I think the problem is if you allow other people, then all you've done is you haven't, what was the advantage of putting the charger there? Because it's gonna be the rare occurrence that someone's gonna get there with their EV.
I guess to the counter of that, say I wanted to park at the train station spot with the electric thing and I had an electric vehicle. Can't I just leave it there all day without plugging it in?
Nope.
Why wouldn't I be able
Okay,
to?
Mr. Pep would like to talk to you about what happens if you do that.
No, without plugging it in. So now you're gonna need enforcement on if I had it plugged in or not, right? Like,
So we're gonna
And everybody has this problem. It's a great
it
question, but
seems like
every single
a massive
community has this
loophole
issue.
in this scenario. I get free parking now if I get an electric vehicle, which seems like an incentive
Nope.
for people to get the electric vehicles. You get free parking wherever you
Nope.
want. Come on down. But it just seems as if I could just park there and not plug it in.
Did you want to comment? Because if you don't want to, I will.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, this did come up, so there's underlying town parking regulations that you guys will put in place. Those are not going away. So there's, you park at a charger and you're done charging, you're gonna start getting charged a fee.
Oh, yeah,
That's your
I know
incentive, get out of there, but then whatever parking that you guys have come up with for that area, or whatever it is, because we're gonna have to do more of these, will be in place as well, so.
It sounds like we're about to bring on a new parking enforcement.
But no, it's,
Yeah.
I think Karen has the thought process in terms of, again, we're developing new business models, and we're also trying to create incentives to motivate the concept of electrification, which is driven by the climate bill. Electric vehicles is one piece of it, so.
I hope, to your point, that it is an incentive that now, 30% of Reading becomes electric vehicles in the next 5 years, and then these spots are like flooded with people. But it's hard for me to
Yeah.
see that right now currently. But I'll be the first one to tell you when it's not.
Oh, yes, Bob.
Thanks, Karen. Another important thing for Chris you to think about for the vetting process is the cost for RMLD to do this is nowhere's equal in all spaces. Some locations naturally fit their power distribution setup, some absolutely did not. So it's not just where it is, what's near it, what businesses, how inconvenient or convenient. Where their power is made a big difference.
Any other questions with respect to the license agreements? There's another one, which I assume the library one is, you're just,
That's
they
all set.
deferred to these rules, but it's not in our packet because it's the library? Yeah, okay.
I have a question. I'm not in Reading at all during the day. This time of year, 6 days a week. When I come home, I drive right through downtown. And on my way to my house, I go through downtown, through these spots, continue on Main Street, take a right on Green Street, and I'm home. These spots are full all the time. Going to Pizza World, Christopher's is closed, but they're always full. Are there gonna be any stipulations for hours, or is it EV only 24/7? I don't know, we should ask that, Joe.
They're EVs. Like, there's a lot of EVs in town and there's more coming.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But until we get there, is there a way we can balance that? Because you're saying, okay, your scenario of grabbing a cup of coffee tonight doesn't apply at night to Christopher's. It applies grabbing a slice or grabbing some sushi or whatever. But if it's, to Bob's point, location matters, right? So if you look on your app, oh, there's a charging station right here on Main Street, and you drive by and like, oh crap, some, gas guzzling cars there, you can drive 800 feet to the depot, right? I'm saying there's a difference on usage. During the day is peak activity, right? People are working.
So
Business
gas
hours.
cars are going away. I think that's another thing you really need to think about.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Okay.
I'm saying, is there a way to balance over time to mitigate the, I'm gonna say harm it's gonna do to those spots at night? I'm not talking about during the day, when there's more activity. I come up at 6, 7 o'clock, most businesses are still open, but a lot are not. But those spots are always full, always.
And they might always be full with electric vehicles as well.
No, right, I'm not saying that that's not the case, but it's not gonna happen, it's not happening, I'm not a fortune teller, but I know it's gonna happen. I agree, but I'm just thinking of some balance over the next
Well,
several
with these three
years.
too, and that was the whole purpose of having the staff vet them for us. I mean, can I park in Christopher's overnight? Like, year round? I mean, I don't know.
Not around, so.
Cause when snow emergency, right?
We're saying
Can I park at the
Christopher's,
depot
this-
overnight?
Not with snow emergency.
Okay, and not, what's the other one? Library. I don't think the library wants people leaving their cars there overnight. So,
There's part of the parking policy for each of these sites.
Yeah.
That exist, we're trying to
Yeah.
work within those
Yeah.
and make minimal changes to those.
Yeah.
Minimal.
I mean, it's also been suggested that, so this is great, we're getting started and we got a grant to pay for this, or RMLD did, but we really are gonna have to have a community policy on like how we're gonna think about these going forward, because there'll be more of them, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, it's, I definitely agree. I'd love to see them all over the place and like I said, my electric vehicles next year, et cetera. So it's not that I'm against it.
Okay, so you're just mad that you can't park for breakfast, maybe, well, wait a minute,
I
this isn't even
believe-
going until May, when do you get in your car?
Well, I'm an under 10,000 pre-order on the electric F-150, so whatever that is, I buy it tomorrow.
Like, right,
I
not
could
before
sell
May.
it, I could sell it for more money probably at this point.
Yep, I probably could too.
But
We could do
it's
arbitrage.
just, it's difficult for me to think that I'm not just charging at my house. Nobody's coming to Christopher's from Maine. It's the opposite way around. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that these spots are full all the time and nothing happens. I mean, we have grant money, it's gotta go there, it is what it is. But these are different spots than outside of Town Hall and other various locations.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see one at Town Hall, but I'm gonna assume like it didn't check all the right boxes at this point. Oh, Ann, sorry.
And I just want to say I love our downtown. If it's not a destination like Linfield, it should be, and that people would be, maybe now it will become one where people know they can go and park and then visit our wonderful downtown and frequent our businesses, and the lovely area that we have here. So I look forward to voting in favor of this. Thanks.
Okay, so are we ready for a vote? Because our next items, we're kind of on time,
So move to approve the EV supply equipment license agreement for 580 Main Street as presented.
Second? Any discussion? All those in favor, could you raise your right hand? Okay, great, 5-0, thank you.
Move to approve the EV supply equipment license agreement for Lincoln Street as presented.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0, thank you. Great, okay, so excited,
So Karen, if you can sign,
okay.
Karen's signature is
this is one for each agreement.
Oh, then why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I got this.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, yeah, okay, because I definitely expected,
Oh, I might have sent it.
Bob, I think these are for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So the question is, who's signing?
Chairman, you better sign these, because your board designated you. I was able to sign the library trustees because they designated me, but your board.
Really? To be the point person, mean like this?
Yep. You wanna quickly vote to let me sign them, then I'll sign them.
I'm happy to do that. Do you want, I think we should be consistent.
Does it say, it says town manager?
Well, that's because Colleen just used that as a default, that's not because that's what town council
But he
said.
signed it for the, you signed it
But
for the
that's 'cause
library.
that's how the trustees vote.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
I
I think you should sign it unless the board casts it.
would, the board be interested in casting a vote to allow the town manager to sign these EV licenses?
Sure.
Okay.
Move that the town manager be authorized to sign the EV supply equipment license agreements for Lincoln Street and 580 Main Street.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
This one's just, this is the Arnold. Okay,
Great,
thanks.
thanks, all right, thank you, all right, woo.
You have to unslash that now.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Yes, you guys are you talking about EVs in your parking discussions yet?
It's
I'm looking at-
surprisingly, Bernie is all aboard on electric vehicle stuff all over the place.
Okay, no, that's good, I think it's important, great. Okay, explains why your meetings are going so long.
4 to 5 hours. I mean, I relate, but still.
I was gonna say.
It's quite a treat.
Okay, next item on our agenda is where am I? Discuss the creation of a sustainability director, and we have tonight with us the chair of the Climate Advisory Committee, David Zeek. David, thank you. We had slides in our presentation, and
Bob said he had the slides
Yes, they're in our packet.
but to display.
I think you probably could, or Caitlin can. Caitlin, would you mind displaying the Climate Advisory slides?
Yeah, I'll share them, I have them
Okay,
right here.
thanks,
Can everyone see those okay?
Yes.
Yep, better.
So I guess I can't see him around. Maybe it'd be more appropriate for me to stand with him.
You stand on the spot, Dave.
Okay, two things I would like to talk to you about. One is a proposal that we hire a sustainability director for Reading, and the other is a proposal for a survey insert in the annual census form. So they're not connected, they're somewhat related. Next slide, Bob. So where are we? So we've talked, you've heard, I'm really glad you got the RMLD pitch here on where their energy plans are going and so forth. I want to point out a few more things. So the Massachusetts 2030 Clean Energy and Climate Plan, which is the state's plan to get to that 2030 point, calls for 1 million homes to be converted from fossil fuels to electric heat by 2030. And it also calls for 750,000 zero emissions vehicles on the road by 2030. So this is the electrification of Massachusetts, the heating and the vehicles. So there's a major effort, and the things that we're doing here, like the electrification efforts that RMLD is working on, they all fit with this, in both the home heating issues and on the electric vehicles. These are so there are, not yet, yeah. So there are significant grant funding coming available to us. You know that we're getting to the end of our application for the green communities. That's going to start queuing us up for grant possibilities through the Green Communities program. We did a workshop on municipal vulnerability program that came up with a whole bunch of project proposals for Reading, what we would do to be ready for climate issues and problems in the town with changing climate. We haven't funded those programs to my knowledge, but there is money available through the municipal vulnerability program that we could apply for to execute the plans that we put in place for ourselves. There's a whole bunch of money also coming from the state for several different other programs, including the American Rescue Plan Act, and we got money in Reading for that. The legislature is voting, the Senate is actually voting tomorrow on the legislature's plan for what to do with that money, and they're voting on $3.6 billion. A good chunk of that comes back again to municipalities through various grants. So there's a lot of money in the queue. Oh, by the way, the state also has a $5 billion surplus that they're trying to decide how to spend. But so there's a lot of money in the queue if you know to ask for it, and if you know how to manage what you receive through that. So this is where I'm proposing that we hire a sustainability director in Reading to help us do that. Next slide, Bob. Okay. What are we looking for? So we need to know what's coming. So if all these various programs, and these aren't the only programs, but there have been others. MAPC has a list of grant programs every month in their newsletter. We need to know what is coming down the pike. We need to know how to apply for it, and we need to be prepared to execute it were we to win one of these contracts. So we need somebody who can do all that, and whoever does it needs to be able to work across the town. So these are programs that are probably not going to fit neatly into one department. It's going to require collaboration across the departments. It requires somebody with the authority to pull people together and to operate a project that's not entirely within one department. That also means that this person should not be buried in the organization, but should be operating at a level like directly reporting to the town manager, where they have the authority to work across departments. I think that's very important too. They need the authority to get the status, the progress, and the financial reports. Grants often, as it says, often require some kind of in-kind contribution. In-kind contribution can mean, and often does mean, staff support. In other words, we're contributing people to make this happen. It's not just us spending the state's dollars. So that's an important thing to have. Next one, Bob. Okay. I think you're probably familiar with the peer communities that Reading has, 23 peer communities. 17 of our 23 peer communities are designated as green communities. And this is a list of those towns, and it shows how many years they've been in the program, how much grant funding they have received, and it varies. So one town has received on an average $38,000 a year through this program. One town has received on an average $210,000 a year through this program. And on the overall, the average is about $116,000 a year. But whether you are the $38,000 town or the $210,000 town is largely a function of how aggressive you are, and if you know what you're doing and how to do it. You have to ask for it, you have to apply for it, you have to get the award, and then you have to execute. So that's the difference. The 38,000 I think is Dedham, right? The second one. Been in the program 11 years. The 210,000 is Marshfield. So, I mean, it's not.
Is it okay if Anna ask a question? Sorry.
Oh, ask me questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
David, I was just wondering, Do you know which of these towns have a sustainability director?
I know of a few sustainability directors, and Natick does. I'm not sure if Belmont does or not. Those would be the only, I'm not sure about Belmont.
So the one with the most grant funding has to date has a sustainability director.
I don't know if.
That looks like Natick. Natick has,
Yeah, so the one that's making the most, the Marshfield was the one that was getting the most awards. I don't know if Marshfield does, for example. So I guess, is that all you asking?
that was what I was
Okay.
asking, yeah.
Next slide, Bob. Okay, so what is a sustainability director? Well, I'll tell you, most of the stuff that I've, in this presentation that described as sustainability director, I stole from Concord. So Natick has one. It was at our public forum on September 22nd. Megan Ackey of MAPC talked at some length about the advantages of working that Natick was seeing once they hired a sustainability director. Concord has one, Wellesley has one. Boston, of course, has a whole department. Cambridge has a whole department. I think with this kind of a program, my guess is that over time, we would add staff, we would add a department. I mean, not dozens of people, but, 2 or 3 people to help out. But we don't start there. We just start with one or part of a person. But these are just general requirements for a sustainability director. Forward-thinking manager, proactively collaborative with town officials, committee staff, and residents, ability to effectuate change and share ideas, and exceptional organizational, analytical, written, and verbal skills. So this job, because of the nature of it, because of the cross department nature of it, requires a lot more leadership skills, a lot more ability to work with people who don't work for you, less command and authority mode and more a collaborative mode, so this requires a fair amount of work. Right now, if you were interested in a job like this, both Arlington and Lexington have job openings for this. They pay on the order of like $70,000 with $90,000 as a maximum. I mean, it varies somewhat. When Concord did theirs, they put a salary range of 70 to 140, depending on how much of what they were looking for, that the person could provide. Usually the people that do this, they have some sort of an environmental background and some sort of town government background, that's the kind of thing they're looking for. So next slide, Bob. There are 2 slides here that I'm not going to go through these bullet by bullet. This is a list of job functions. Now, we would make up our own job list, right? And we would organize it accordingly. But so this is a list of job functions that most of them are from Concord. In general, there are groups. There's a project management. Some of these are project management. Some of these are goal setting and monitoring and reporting. Some of these are citizen education and information. Some of these are collaboration with town businesses. So there's a lot of different groups that this person's supposed to be working with. So we should create this position for a sustainability director for Reading. I think we should do this at our April town meeting. I understand from Karen that there has to be some sort of a budget slot in December because of your timing, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that, came up earlier tonight, so we're entering into budgeting, we're in budgeting,
Yeah.
and in December, select board will be involved in the FinCom budget talks.
You're right. So we haven't really fleshed all this out. There's various ways we could do this. I would suggest maybe starting with a half-time person, maybe put a placeholder for a half-time person. I think we can look at collaboration with other towns. Maybe they want to share somebody. We could get a full-time person, but share them, something like that. Yeah, Ann.
I noticed one of the slides you mentioned, like the person, it would be good, maybe an insider and be able to kind of navigate the different departments. To start off, could this be something where someone with existing responsibilities in town could be given these responsibilities? I mean, I know it certainly sounds like a full-time job, but someone could be tapped to take on some of this to start out. Does that sound?
Well, I think
Yeah.
that's where you get into the dead deal. You know, so I think when you have somebody who has a job that has deliverables, timelines, and various reporting structure, then they don't spend their time wondering which organization is coming out with these requests and when the due date is and who you know, where the forms are. They don't spend their time talking to other sustainability managers about what's working in Natick, what's working in Concord. I think you can get somebody who can sort of work the mechanics of it, but I don't think you can get somebody who would be proactive for Reading, doing it that way. And besides that, the nature of the job is if I'm reporting to the the head of DPW, people think of me as a report to the DPW, not as a sustainability director for Reading with authority to bring the different departments together. So there's a hierarchy ranking thing that goes on there. So I would not do that. I think towns do that. I think we do that. We lay it on somebody who's already there. But I don't. That's not how you tap into hundreds of millions of dollars of ARPA funding, MVP funding, green communities funding. We're talking a much different kind of environment. So I would suggest that we put a placeholder in December. This really needs to be discussed with the new town manager, to define the role, the relationships and so forth. So we really wouldn't even get into exactly how this would work. Then once, if we approved it in April, I don't know how quickly we could hire one, maybe middle of summer, maybe, if we were lucky, So it's gonna take a while to get this rolling. I think we just need to, but we do need, I guess, the placeholder, right? Next slide, Bob. It's just more of these job functions. And again, I'm not going to walk through.
Talk to other communities too if you really wanted to pursue.
Yeah, we think perhaps Wakefield's interested in doing this. We have not approached them formally. I'm not sure if we're the right ones, but we'll start with some feelers. So there's a whole lot of different functions. Again, we would pick our own functions, but here's a menu to pick from. And that's really it. That's what I think we should do about the sustainability director.
Thank you for defining that.
Thanks, Karen. David or Bob, I'd actually be interested in either of your perspectives on this. Where would you envision this sort of within our town's organizational chart? Like, who would this person report to? What department would they fall under out of the gate? Would you think, maybe at some point we'd have our own sustainability department, but if we funded one position in the next budget, where would this fall? I
would put this person reporting to the town manager. This is kind of like another assistant town manager, because when the assistant town manager or the sustainability director comes and talks to you as an employee of the town, that his recourse or her recourse, is up to the town manager. We're not going to have a debate about who's who in the hierarchy, right? So I think that's what I would do. I would just make it at this point. I would just make it a staff responsible to the town manager.
So a new department head.
It's not really even a department, at this point anyway. Okay. Maybe not for years, but because if we were to apply for a particular Green Communities, grant, that would pull together a particular set of people within the town. Certain departments would be involved, others would not, and therefore you kind of have to cobble together the project team, cobble together the accounting and project structure. It's a little bit of this person's salary and a little bit of that expense account over there, and you have to pull all that together. So I think and then when it's over, it goes away, and you start with a new one. Does that make sense, Ann?
I'm just thinking about our structure currently. know, I wonder if it would fall, maybe it would fall under public services. I could see it sort of falling within community development, but I don't know. Bob, do you have any thoughts on where it might logically fall? I'm just, like, I'm looking at literally a chart here. Yeah, like an org chart. But. Karen, yeah.
Yeah, I see you.
I've had the same question, Ann, as you have for, I don't know, several months since I first read this paper. My first thought, and it's just been discussed superficially, is RMLD is the best place for it. And I'm sorry to be talking behind their backs after they left, but that way the position is naturally regionalized with 4 communities. And there's a better fit for what they do as a mission, albeit this person would have a different approach and angle than what we do. And when I say that, it could be a town-funded position. I'm not sure, but organizationally, they fit with RMLD pretty well. They could fit technically in the future under public health. They could fit under planning or community development. They could also fit in facilities, so it is hard to know.
Right.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah, I did think facilities or community development maybe seemed like a logical place. The
Logical in what sense?
in terms of sort of a similar mission in terms of planning for the community.
You think that they could control town resources from that position?
I think so.
Well, David, with all due respect, if you're gonna pay someone $70,000, you're not gonna get a department head.
I'm not talking about.
So you really have to flesh out, the expectation.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what this is, right? A list of possible.
I think, and I do think, I pushed back, Bob, I think I'd push back a little bit on putting this position within RMLD if we wanted the person to be a town employee. I feel like it would make sense for them to fall within the town organizational structure. And to do that sort of collaborative work in-house and across the different departments.
Also the advocacy for Reading. I would be like, oh yeah, I don't care what Wilmington does. I mean, they're not listening, are they? But certainly if it's a Reading employee, then it's going to advocate for Reading. That person will advocate for Reading.
There are, some of the MLPs have their own, by the way. They also hire them, like Hingham has their own, MLP does. Hingham.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, but they're talking energy projects, right? I mean, they're talking about what Greg was talking about here,
Okay.
how can, do those kind of things. I think we're talking about various kinds of, we're talking about, sewer programs, that would be a little tough to maybe run from RMLD.
Yeah.
We're talking about lighting, and we're talking that what might be good, One of the things that I hope we get to here, I mean, one of the lessons that I took away from town meeting was we had to vote on funding, like the gas boiler replacements, and the argument was, well, there's really no good option, it would cost much more to do a lot of retrofits of the buildings and so forth, and it's probably the truth, right? But we need to do a survey of our town buildings and see where there are possibilities to do upgrades, and where the best thing to do is just fix what we have, or upgrade what we have. I mean, it's the kind of discussion that we had in town meeting was completely inappropriate to town meeting, because none of the groups that should have been in the know about that, including the select board, my committee, had any information on what, if any, alternatives there were. So I mean, it was a here's the deal, take it or leave it, right? And there's no time in a town meeting, obviously, to do any further research. But I think those are the kind of things that I wouldn't expect RMLD to do for me, So that's kind of, like I said, I just leave it there. I think we should put a placeholder in our budget, and we should, then plan going into the April town meeting, and we can work on where they fit in the organization and that kind of thing.
Thoughts? Carlo?
You're right, you're right. All right, I'll go.
He's talked a lot tonight.
Yes.
Sorry,
Do
Only good things.
sorry, it's getting late.
Is there a timeline? I know a lot of this ties into green communities and other things as far as
Mhm.
grant funding. But what kind of timeline are we on? And I'm not directing directly to you, David, to be officially a green community? Is it, what time next year are we deemed
Really
to
good
be?
question. It's kind of imminent. We are waiting to see if our legislators can get some changes. Oh shoot, I meant to ask Colleen for an update on that because she was gonna go lobby again this week. So we're kind of waiting. Hopefully, I don't know, by December, we might know whether they're gonna make it even easier for us. And Bob had told me last summer we'd probably be ready in October. So it's kind of like any time this could happen. We're just about ready to go. I think we have another, I think we've approved everything we need. Yes, actually, yes, so we needed a plan. So at town meeting, we just approved the plan. You're right.
Plan and funded.
Yep, so we're really,
Funded.
right, we're really in good shape. Okay, sorry,
Okay,
long answer.
And the MVP is ongoing, you know that, right? And-
right.
Yes.
Thanks, Karen. So yeah, to Carlos' point, I know that it's in the works for us becoming a part of it, and if town meeting didn't pass what happened prior, then we wouldn't become part of it. But there's still a chance that we don't ever become part of it. I know that it's more positive now than it was 3 months ago, 4 months ago. So we're still trending in that direction. But if we didn't, we are now creating a position for something to work on grants that we can't even get.
Well, the Green Communities grants.
Correct.
We could still get the MVP grants. We could still get the ARPA grants. I mean, those are proposals for $300 or $400 million for, infrastructure upgrades, like the sewer systems, water systems, things like that. So, I mean, even if we didn't get a nickel out of Green Communities, there's all these other programs that we would do it for.
I guess,
I misspoke, let me retract that. We, there was a warrant article for spending associated with the plan that staff has worked on. Town meeting did not need to approve the plan, but the plan exists, it was done with Noresco, and we went ahead anyway and decided to spend money. Sorry.
for me, it always comes down to money, how much it's gonna end up costing. So when I end up seeing the chart of all the different municipalities and whatnot in here, the first thing that I would look at in 2010, Andover, 1 million, that's how long they've been in the green community for. But they don't have a sustainability director and they were able to get $1 million out of it? Or they do?
I don't know whether they do or don't, but I have not, there's more,
Yeah, because then
investigation to
it just scales down from there. The same thing with Winchester, Bedford, Tewksbury. If they're all getting millions of dollars without a director, how are they accomplishing that without having one?
I think they do, if they don't have one, then they've got to assign it to somebody who's already in the town.
Town manager or something? Like,
Well,
it seems,
The town manager could do it, but does the town manager really have the bandwidth to be doing that kind of thing?
Someone's doing it, is what he's saying. Someone's doing it.
Someone's doing it.
Yeah, and he said it'll get done, but then when you start looking at the fact that, oh, by the way, there's millions of dollars out there for ARPA funds, for MVP funding, then suddenly it's not just green communities, it's like, and I've had this conversation actually with our town accountant about are you gonna have the bandwidth to really be creative and go after those ARPA grants, because there's gonna be creative uses of ARPA funding and you wanna be very good at going after the grants, and you made that point, so sorry, Mark.
Thanks. David, I think it'd be very helpful to learn more about some of the communities that do have sustainability directors, what they're doing, how effective they've been, maybe even talk to a few of them. You talked about Natick, maybe Belmont, Concord, Wellesley, would be great to kind of understand a little bit more. I think the idea is really interesting. I'm kind of just wrapping around it a little bit. And to your point, Karen, on ARPA funds, and listening to that thing I did today, there's going to be so great a need to do exactly what you're talking about in sustainability with ARPA funds. Because the discussion from this group was that the folks that get organized and figure out the projects they want can go attack for the ARPA funds, and they get it. And that seems to be the strategy that's working right now. So I get it on energy projects, energy efficiency, but I think that it may be even a bigger need that's going on that relates to this, this pool of cash that's out there. I look at our existing structure, and to your point, and I think community development is picking up most of the responsibility at the moment, or workload.
Yeah.
Maybe workload is the right way to put it at the moment. And we pushed on them pretty hard.
We get a
on
lot of
this.
grants, yeah.
Yeah, no, they get grants. They've been pushing on the green communities, the pieces to get them done. And, Julie in particular, but I'm sure others, very engaged as well. And so, would this be kind of, would it be Julie? Would it be things coming off of those other departments now and going to this new role? I don't know. I'm just poking around at it a little bit, but it'd be great to get more information on kind of how it's working in various communities. And maybe to Chris's point too, if there are communities that are really effective at getting money, who's doing the work? Because I'm sure it's not just sitting on existing resources.
What kind
It's gotta be
of,
something.
Exactly. I agree, because just even, I'm looking here at 2017 for Stoneham, which is stone's throw away, is $150 a year for 4 years. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? And they may or may not have one, I'm not saying they do or they don't, but it's kind of like when we hired Erin, I say we, when Bob hired Erin has gotten a lot of grants, Erin Schaefer.
Yep.
So it's I think it's a good thing, but we should do more research, like Mark said, and crawl before we walk a little bit. I think it's the right direction, but out of these towns, there's many more in the state, right? What is it?
These are
Over 75% is green, right? Green communities, or 85,
Green communities,
right?
yeah.
So it's a majority of the state that are green communities, and this is one portion, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, our peers.
Right, so the dollars here are pretty impressive for how long they've been doing it. Some are just relatively new. Burlington is newer, so I think it's a good idea, but where to put it and who do they report to, and is it start off part-time or full-time? I think it's a conversation that everybody can have, but I think it's a position that will not only help the town, it will generate a lot of grant funding. And never mind the ARPA money. The ARPA money is a one-off, right?
Yeah, but it's
No, it's
5
a big
years
one.
of one-off.
No, it's a big one. It's a big one.
the state ARPA money coming behind the stuff we already have.
Right,
Like,
right.
that's what.
But
yeah.
it's much more than that.
Yeah,
It's-
it's a
that's
huge
a
pot
big
of
one.
money, yes.
That's a big one. But
Show me the money.
green communities, the MVP, and what's the other one again? Sorry.
Well, that was it. That's the three I was talking about.
Yeah.
But
So that
there are other
yeah.
programs.
So that right, but those are going to be ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where this is.
I do have a novel idea to propose, and it's taking off what you said and whoever recommended the RMLD thing. What if it was a collaboration and housed at RMLD, that we would collaborate with the other towns within RMLD, so whatever 3 or 4 towns that is, and they would all share the same director with the same vision. And this way here it is part-time-ish between it, and it's all towards the same goal, and it's all housed within the people from the RMLD that, is just going with it. It seems like if the position pays for itself, then it's a no-brainer. Like, why, if you're getting $166,000 a year and you're paying $100 or $120, like it makes sense to me financially with that. But just maybe something like that where we would just combine the 3 or 4 RMLD towns, share the same director for our, because
We get 25%.
yeah, so just share it between all, because perhaps they don't have it, most likely they don't, and then that's just a win-win for everybody. And, it just seems more, because seeing the presentation from the RMLD, it seems as if they know where they're going with all of this, and this is a portion of it, but it does, for me, it does make sense from the RMLD aspect to have them there, but But then from the town management, if they were only with Reading, then it would fit with the town manager, I guess, would be the way. So there's different quasi ways to
Yeah,
go.
so let me respond. So, I think I think RMLD should have a sustainability director. And I think that person should help Greg on all of these electrification and energy efficiency and green energy programs that they have. For all four towns.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the same definition as we have here in Reading. You know, I mean, if you go look at the projects that were identified by the MVP program, very few of them are energy programs. They were, you know, they were preparing buildings for emergency use in case of like floods, places where, you know, like provide refrigeration and places for people to stay when they lost their electricity. You know, this was not just an energy improvement program. And I don't think we want to, that our efforts, our sustainability efforts, I mean, we've talked about about sustainability here too. And I don't think we talked really about energy efforts on our list because my committee assumes that all energy improvement projects are done in collaboration with RMLD. The ones we talked about, you know, were improvements to the town facilities, to the services for the residents. But that's my feeling about what I think if you start from a MLP perspective, you get an MLP product result, you know.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, real quick though. So you're saying if there was a sustainability director already at RMLD, whatever grants they would apply for would not be the same as the ones Reading itself would be applying for?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
But to riff on that idea, Marlena, I think it would be great for this to kind of be done in conjunction, but a slightly different way. I think RMLD needs somebody to take on this role, definitely. And Reading is gonna want its specific pieces. And whether or not it's a full-time person, we can talk about it. But I think to kind of represent our interests, you need somebody who's wearing the Reading hat only. But I think RMLD is gonna be key to implementing some of this stuff. And the connection that I think we're looking for at some point is the RMLD demand is all about electrification. It's all about these changeovers, which is a lot of what we're talking about here in these programs. And under the name sustainability, that if I were them, I'd look at it and I'd erase sustainability and I'd write electrification, because it's the same thing. It's just from their point of view. So I think there's a huge interest on I would imagine RMLD would have a huge interest in this. And we need to get our piece of the pie, so we're gonna have to figure out how to do it ourselves too. It's kind of like a grant writer for a bunch of things isn't as effective as somebody who's wearing the hat.
And remember all these other features here about working with the community, working with businesses, working with residents, you know. These are also features that I think we would want to definitely have, you know, that's a community effort. It's not something that's just being done in a corner, you know.
I keep getting back to, you know, Bob's has led the charge to replace a lot of the sewers in town. Bob, are we done or what? What's he saying? I can't see it. You're like 2 inches big up there.
Did you say sewers?
Yeah, sewers. Like, are we done? Are they all like beautiful?
Well, we're done with the most urgent sewer stations, but there's probably 4 or 5 left that are gonna be done in the next 10 or 15 years.
Just several $1 million worth.
That's all. That's all. A couple miles worth of lines, like on Walker's Brook, right? From 1892, did you say?
Yeah, that was water, yeah.
Didn't we just move $400,000 from one water plan to an emergency repairs on Walker's Brook? You know, so.
Yeah. So that's the kind of pie you're talking about, I think, right? And that's what falls into MVP, if I understand it, those kind of things?
So it's everything, but some of it was just, some of it was like drainage. I mean, you know, Reading is built on a swamp, right?
Yeah.
So some of it was drainage but some of it was just public services. I mean, you know, when we have our apartment house across the street, right, flooded, first time ever like that, you know, what do? We cobbled together some generous citizens and so forth to kind of bail them out. But what if that becomes more common?
Yeah.
So I'll leave that with you. But I guess the only important piece there would be that if in order to discuss this, I think we probably have to put a placeholder into the budget in December, just so that there's something to work with as we work out what we really would do, right? You know, curiously enough, when we did a little dot voting poll at the town forest celebration, you know, we had a table there and everything, people came over and voted for 19 different initiatives that were environmental initiatives. Sustainability director got more votes than anything else that we suggested. And that was because, in part, people voted for things that looked like Reading was doing something for Reading. They weren't interested in our participation in statewide things. They weren't interested in our participation in nationwide things. They were interested in programs where we actually had something we were doing within Reading for Reading residents. And that got more votes than anything else. That's not a statistically interesting survey. That's a bunch of people at a party, right? But anyway, I do have one more slide on different.
Okay, do that. A couple of things. One is, I would think it would be, before I'd be comfortable kind of saying, let's put a placeholder in, I'd like to see this fleshed out further. I'd like to look at considerations of different funding sources for it. For example, and I know this one's probably off the table, but would this fit as an ARPA kind of thing by itself in terms of a funding source for doing it? I want to think about where this could kind of come from and go for. And, you know, again, maybe there are partnerships with RMLD that could make sense or not. But I don't know kind of what to put in as a placeholder. Is it a half-time person? You know, is it 40 grand? Is it a 5-year commitment at 80 grand? I'm not sure where to put it yet.
I wouldn't jump for the big bucks. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it may be that, you know, it's a modest placeholder and it gets fleshed out further over time. Probably, you know, we're all just kind of getting this first time now, so
Yes.
I'd like a little bit of time to think.
Usually when you do, you know, when you get these kind of awards, they come with strings, right?
Everything.
At least they come with reports, right?
Yep.
And so I think that at some level, these are opportunity costs. I kind of think of it as we pay for them out of our own Reading revenues. This person, this 40K or something, it's the opportunity cost of whether we get these awards or not. You know that's where it gets paid back. A lot of times the awards just won't let you. They won't give you the money to do the project and give you money to manage the project. You know, which is.
If we can establish kind of tighter hooks into money, so the notion of a grant writer always bringing in more money than they cost is that's the justification of every grant writer. But if there's a way to talk about more of a tight hook that you get from this, whether it's into green communities or something else, so that the pot of money isn't just, geez, we'll see if there are some grants. It's like, here are the grants, you know, come and get it. That I think would be really helpful in the discussion, because otherwise, you know, the discussion is, what are we going to crowd out? What are we going to trade it for? And that's a harder discussion, right?
I think it would also be helpful to see how other communities have structured at a staff level the solicitation of these funds and these initiatives. So, you know, there's some of the other communities have sustainability directors. Sounds like some don't, but are still getting grants. What kind of staffing do they have in place to ensure they're getting these kind of resources?
Okay.
Secret sauce.
So I think we can get some of that. I don't know how much we can get by December.
So that's gonna change, because on top of what they maybe they were just doing it on the fly for green communities, and now they're staring at ARPA funds, and like they're, so, I mean, we're probably not the only ones having this conversation right now. How are we gonna go get Reading's share?
More than our share.
More than our share.
Can I get the next slide, Bob? The last slide? Oh, it is. He does have the last slide.
Can ARPA funds pay for this position or no?
Well, that's what Mark was asking.
I don't understand the rules. Maybe somebody does, maybe they don't. But what I heard on this conference call was all sorts of things that I wouldn't have expected. What I had been led to believe versus what I was hearing was like,
right.
Really?
Because that
Well, there's the
seems
stuff
as
that
if
came to municipalities and then the stuff that's come to the state. And so there are fewer strings attached to the state
Yeah.
that they're now voting on, you know, and
Right,
figuring
yeah.
out what they're gonna do with, but.
Yeah, and the rules I'm sure will continue to change a bit and evolve, but I poke.
So we'll continue to look at that and see and get more information about what other towns are doing, especially the ones that have a director. This is an entirely different, topic.
Shifting gears.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're proposing to include this survey. This is a one-page piece of paper that would be inserted into the annual census. And we worked with this with RMLD, so about in terms of what we were asking. And what it's asking for is this an optional anonymous survey? So you can fill it out and return it or not, as a resident. But you just put it back in the envelope or something. And then but what it's asking for is what the heating sources and cooling sources are in your house. And there's a couple questions here too about, are you planning to change? Are you planning to move to a heat pump in 3 years? But this fits with both the state program about 1 million homes being converted to heat pumps over the next 10 years, and this fits with RMLD's heat pump electrification initiative. So what we're asking is, what is their primary source of heating? Oil, natural gas, propane, heat pump, other electric, and then they have supplemental? If they have maybe they have another addition to their home, or they have something else in the basement or whatever.
Right.
It's just another form, perhaps. And the same question for cooling. And then we would just collect this on an annual basis. And the purpose of it is to establish a trend, to understand what the plan is for Reading residents. Now, from their perspective, what do they have? Are they thinking of changing? That's all it is.
I think that's the key point. I think you may want to restructure your last questions a little bit or add one. You want to know people who are considering making a change. The problem with the questions as written is you're only finding out people that are aware of heat pumps and talking about doing it in 3 years. What about the folks that are saying, yeah, I'm going to need to upgrade? If you say yes, no on a heat pump, I don't know enough, I'm going to say no. I think you're really interested in who's thinking about changing their system.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're willing to commit already, say, yeah, I'm into a heat pump already, great. But I think you want to be great to know, yeah, I'm getting ready to change my system.
Yeah, and
Great question.
we didn't include those because we felt that was a marketing angle. We're fishing for marketing opportunities. If you say you're interested in moving off your propane system, you expect a call.
Then you need, in that case, add thinking about it. Yes, no is
And
sharp.
besides that, we don't really care about that as much as if they're moving to electric. We're trying to track the movement to electrical. So you think we want to know?
He wants to predict it, and you're trying to track it.
I'm just trying to track it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to see who's the potential.
Yeah. These last two questions were actually put on there by RMLD, and these were not questions that we were mentioning.
It is a maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're looking for our approval, but if you are, I think we should just add this to a future agenda because it's not quite on our agenda tonight.
I was gonna ask so who puts the census together? The town clerk?
Yeah, I guess.
Does she know about, oh, yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
okay. Does she know yet?
She was the one that said that it had to be approved by the board.
Okay.
So I think
Yes, for an
maybe we should
insert,
put this
separate
on our next.
Okay, so
next
usually we
agenda.
do discuss an item and then we will vote on our next meeting. So
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. Are you up against a deadline?
Well, the census,
Which goes
the
out in
annual
new-
town census, it has,
Goes out in the new year. Right, they'll go out in the new year, I think.
goes in January, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So if we get you on the next meeting, hopefully that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the same thing, same.
Yeah, I think so.
Proposal.
So this would this would be we've discussed it and if anybody has any additional questions, they could follow up with you. And then next time it would be on vote on
Okay.
adopting this.
Right.
Are there any other questions? How do you guys feel? Oh, sorry, Bob. Hi, you can speak.
It's okay. I think Laura's gonna visit you next meeting because of the precinct stuff, so it would be, good to pair that up for her.
Excellent. All right.
Not be good to pair that up? Is that
It
what you
would
said?
be good. It would be good. She'll be here anyway.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Good stuff, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay. Bye, Marlena. Sorry.
Discuss future agendas.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay. Okay, we're doing that before minutes, huh? Okay, do we have any other, let's see, future agenda items from anyone?
I just wanted to flag what Bob had just mentioned. I think we should have on so I think we definitely should have on our future agenda for next week or our next meeting, an update on the precinct maps. I think Laura probably heard from Laura in precinct meetings that as the maps are currently, our precinct maps are currently drawn, would result in sub-precincts. Laura, I understand, is working with the secretary's office to come up with alternative maps, so we won't have that sub-precinct issue, which I think would be a nightmare for poll workers and voters. So hopefully at the next meeting, we can either have an update or new maps to vote on.
Okay.
I also, just because we're holding time for the screening committee until 8, and I was looking at potentially until 8. I was looking at the future agenda for the 23rd, and it looks like there are actually some agenda items that are scheduled before 8, including something with the MAPC. So I don't know, are we expecting guests before 8 o'clock?
Hold on, what does it say about MAPC? Let me just open this up again.
So, discussing.
I can answer that. All of that can be changed. The 8 o'clock and the other hearings have already been advertised.
Sure.
But MAPC could come after 8:20 or after 8:30.
Okay.
And you can see some other agenda items, such as what you just mentioned, and listed on the screen kind of in italics as tentative. But the MAPC visit is time sensitive for green communities.
Okay. Hopefully we can get comfort. The screening committee may or may not need to go until 8. It may not. We were just asked to hold that time, so.
Okay, this is the meeting that we're on the same date. Is this the 17th then?
The 23rd.
Okay, and it's day 2, so hopefully, okay.
Yeah, it may end up being a non-issue. I just.
Okay.
And if there, maybe there are non-controversial items to put at the beginning of the meeting in our absence, if it comes to that
What Ann was
too.
saying is, yes, so we might need to start a select board meeting late on the 23rd.
Yeah.
Like
We're holding
8:15.
12 to 8, so we could be, Karen and I could be potentially in for a very long day, but.
I just caught what you were saying. You don't know yet.
We don't know yet, we're holding that,
okay.
we've been asked to hold that time by Bernie.
I thought you were gonna present at 8 o'clock. I was getting confused. Okay,
No,
I got you
so
now.
the screening
Yeah,
members
yeah,
are
I
holding
got it,
that
I got
time
it,
in case
I
we're
got it.
interviewing
I got it.
candidates during that time.
Mark can be chair. We're fine.
Well, I mean, that is also a possibility, if we could sort of stack the beginning of the agenda with some like easy breezy consent agenda type
You guys
thing.
can have an hour to do the liaison reports, how's that?
Hey, Bob has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Bob.
Yeah, obviously, it's whatever Karen determines, but my thoughts were similar that if you have items that you know are important that someone's visiting for, you probably want to schedule those after 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So for instance, and there's others you want the full group board there, but you talked about at the next meeting, discussing your communication policy. So I would suppose you'd all want to be there for that.
Yeah.
Our HR director has been asked to come in and can come in that night, and we could always change it. Whether the full board wants to hear, a draft discussion of personnel policies is up to you, but why don't you just sort of kick around, what things can be done without a full board if that's what it comes to it, or just start at 8 o'clock. It's not a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
If we're starting at 8, we need to move some of these around, I think.
Right, and Bob said that he could do that.
Priorities first too.
Yeah.
Right, so we need, I can't read that clearly, but does it include signing the Bancroft agreement?
That's not in there.
That needs to be on there,
Yeah.
23rd.
No, because that was on tonight, Mark. We weren't sure, so now we'll have to move it to next time
So
also.
we'll need to do
Yep.
that, we need to add, David's request with respect to the survey.
Yep.
And
Are there?
That's tied in with Laura.
Is that up
Precinct
there already?
maps. Precinct maps is
Laura
there.
is, precinct maps is there.
Okay, add it to precinct maps, got it.
I also am remembering, I think it was our last meeting, we talked about, the conversation with Meadowbrook about the easement. And we decided that needed to be its own agenda item. So I don't know if that's
Probably good timing.
next meeting. But we should have that as a future
Yeah, that's the
agenda
future.
item.
If it's not next,
If
it's
it's
the
not
one
next
after.
time, it's sometimes soon thereafter.
We'll need to, depending on what happens with recalc people and a Basque meeting, either this meeting or it's starting to feel like the one after might be the
Probably
right
the one
time.
after.
Yeah, that might be the right time.
We need to get more applicants. We need to get
Okay,
more-
Yeah.
recalc.
Is there a
Maybe
deadline for the recalc?
No, the sooner they start, the better. The goal
Yeah.
is just to get going in
Yeah.
December.
No deadline.
I mean, no deadline for the applications for applicant.
No, we can extend it if we need to.
We'll be at the 15 days. That's not the problem. The
Right,
issue is more
right.
candidates.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you mind if we do communication policies, because that could take, I don't know how much work we have to do. I know that's your baby, but do we need to do that on the,
Is this your
We don't
baby?
have to do it next time. I know in our last meeting, I know Chris and I were both interested in having the conversation. I don't think it has to be at the next meeting. I just know we wanted to do it. at
Yeah.
some-
if we're potentially starting at 8, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that moving later.
Okay.
Chris, I don't know about you. That can be another day.
Policies, just put it 12/7 or.
Is there in fact a draft, Bob, of the personnel policies?
Sean has a 10 or 12 slide presentation to show you, not intense paperwork. He just wants to give you a flavor and have you start thinking about it and
Okay.
give you any chance to have feedback.
Okay,
I have not seen a paper copy or electronic copy of a document yet.
okay.
That could also wait till December 7th. I don't know if there's any magic to that from a timing standpoint. Your December 7th agenda, which is a Tuesday, is relatively light. We put MAPC there in case you wanted to have a second meeting. One was a discuss and the other was a vote. You must do licenses that night. And there's not much else listed, so, you can think of that as a placeholder for some of these things that don't get done. And then December 8th and 14th are typically budget-only discussions. And then we typically hold the 15th for another budget night. That hasn't been needed in years, but just in case. And then, I don't remember, someone asked me to hold it for the town manager search process if you needed a whole night by itself, 15th. So it's obviously up to all of you to sort all this out.
Right.
Bob, quick question on the liquor licenses. We have some that are issued but not in place, like at Post.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Is there a way to get an update or inform the applicant that we're expecting them to join us and chat?
Yeah, we could definitely ask. Some of us go out in the next 3 weeks and do in-person inspections, so that would be part of the dialogue.
Cool. Yeah, I think we haven't really heard anything, and it's a little strange having a license, but nothing going on with it yet.
Yeah, it's always interesting when someone is willing to pay for a license for a whole year and doesn't use it.
Yeah.
at least you have it.
True, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's worth, and a worthwhile investment.
Could I add only one thing? For the park, if I can ask Bernie if he could come in for the 7th, then it seems like December 7th would be, because that's open. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll just propose it.
Okay, I'll let you know if it, whatever, it starts getting crowded out, but yeah, let's say 12/7.
what night is the Christmas party? Which night is that? If you guys want chocolate, we have to have a party.
Probably not Pearl Harbor enough tonight.
All right.
You do that during the budget meetings,
Okay, all right, we'll see how that goes.
Oh, that would be great. That would make budgeting fun. Okay, are we ready for minutes?
It'll be the placeholder.
Okay.
I'm ready for minutes.
I'm ready for minutes.
Were there a lot of changes? Did everyone submit their edits to Caitlin?
I did only had a couple little ones.
I sent some in.
You want me to put them up, Bob?
Oh, yeah. I can do it. I gotta find it.
They're in the tonight's folder.
Yeah. I almost just walked down the hall, so it's a good thing you caught me. Let's see. Oh, there's two sets. That's why I'm confused.
12 was the first set.
I almost called one of you Mr. Moderator, so I'll have to be careful.
You can get that out of your system for a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, for a long bit.
So I guess we'll skip over that. Here's some of the changes.
I can't even read those.
Yikes.
Let me
You
know
go
if there's
like
any swears.
4 times the size?
Yeah, I can't, I have the wrong glasses on.
How's that?
That's about better.
Yeah.
Ian, did you know something that night or what?
Well, I was just very nervous of knowing I was very nervous that night, knowing that the legislature had released their maps the same day we were approving our precinct maps. And I didn't know, I felt very chicken and egg, and it still continues to be chicken and egg. The legislature, the governor has signed the legislative maps, the House and Senate maps, and the House district lines don't match our precinct lines, so. Yeah, so that was what I was afraid of, and that was what happened.
She was asking
Yeah.
a lot of questions, you remember that? Man, I was like, why is she asking all these questions?
That's what I was afraid would happen, happened, so.
And when do they plan to resolve it by?
Well, Laura's gonna come to us with new maps for us, I hope.
Oh, different maps.
She'll come to us with new precinct maps to approve, that would hopefully, match up with the legislative district, so.
Just add District 13, the cover games.
She said she thinks we'll be able
Deadline
to
is February
stay,
30th.
she thinks we'll be able to stick with 8 precincts,
So we're gonna have to print out another.
yeah, we would have to print out another.
It's in
Print out
color
another
too.
one.
I know.
Alright, can we
That's
keep
extra.
going? This is
That's
great,
extra.
this is awesome. Does everyone,
Oh, more than 5.
okay, does everyone love these changes? Can we keep going?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, that's good.
Thank you.
No,
So-
no changes. So this is where I noted the issue of sometimes land is less expensive, sometimes more on the notion of average cost.
Okay.
Sensible wording, that looks fine to me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yep.
Spelled council wrong.
Wait, can you go back for a second? I'm not sure they were citing precedent for chair and vice chair.
That's what Chris said. That's,
Alright, so those are Chris's words?
yeah, this is what Chris relayed, so I think that's pretty.
Alright.
It is in the emails as well.
We good?
Iron Molesta talks about optics.
Yep, I think this is okay.
Alright, well, this horse is beat dead, so.
Alright. Okay.
No, fine.
Sorry, it's actually Elder and Human Services, plural. I missed the S myself. Thank you.
So Chris, next time you make a mistake, I get to like put in like lots of paragraphs in the meetings and like you want me to say it out loud in a meeting, make a big deal out of it, or you just want me to say, oops, happens?
Surprisingly,
Just wondering.
my wife says the exact same thing, and I am still waiting for that opportunity to arise.
Mark, if you don't mind a friendly amendment,
Please.
that's Kevin's title.
Sorry, Community Services Director.
Correct.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, good.
And that's it.
Alright,
All right,
Great.
move to approve the meeting minutes of October 12th, 2021 as amended.
second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? Anyone in favor? All in favor, 5-0.
And let's look at October 26th.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, and this was blank because I promised her I was gonna come back to her with the correct name of the committee, so that's why I put that in there.
Alright, I meant to, ask you before I sent it out, but I must have just forgot.
Okay. Oh, yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
I added the word not, which was rather important there.
That is an important one, yes.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Too late now.
It's fixed now. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, that was good, yeah. Alright,
That's it.
Wonderful.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes, meeting minutes of October 26th, 2021 as amended.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Wonderful. Motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor? We are adjourned, it's not even 11.